Dorothy overheard Juanita putting her fetal abduction plot against Lily in the vault in the mayor's mansion, and temporarily delayed it by flipping the breakers, plunging them all into darkness. Dorothy and Kevin, who just returned from his most recent trek to the upper realm, agreed to put their differences aside to save Lily. But when they blew the vault doors open, Juanita, the evil doctor performing the surgery, and Lily had disappeared.
"A secret passage out of a vault?" Dorothy sneered. "That's the most ridiculous idea I've ever heard of. Leave it to you, Kevin, to come up with. Ah!"
Dorothy gave a yell of disgust as something cold and wet brushed her hand in the dark. "It's just our dog, Hank," Kevin assured Dorothy. He took off his night vision goggles and clipped a flashlight to his shirt so he and Hank could get a better look at the vault. "He must have wondered where everybody went and came down here looking for us."
"If only he could go looking for Lily and find her," Dorothy huffed.
She had never liked the mutt that Kevin brought into the family home, sure that it would bring fleas, rabies, distemper, and any other ill-bred disease along with it. In retaliation, Dorothy had gone to a local animal shelter and adopted the meanest, rankest, most unpleasant feline available, naming her Missy. But this plan backfired when Missy immediately mellowed under Kevin's care and love. Missy the cat and Hank the dog had been inseparable friends ever since. In fact, Missy came strolling into the vault a moment later. "Maybe Hank and Missy can help us find Lily," Kevin thought aloud as he examined the inside of the vault. There were no signs of any secret passages that he could immediately spot. Kevin noticed that a scarf that Lily had been wearing earlier in the day had been discarded on the floor. He picked it up and shoved it under Hank's nose. Kevin had developed the ability to communicate directly with animals during his many travels and adventures, trying to save the world from the Pinnacle's imminent attack. And his levels developed at a fantastical pace that had even his peers seeing he was a prodigy. Kevin brought every bit of his skill forward to communicate directly with Hank, letting the dog know that his mistress was in mortal danger, that Kevin needed his help to find her, and that Hank should try to see if he could follow the scent from the discarded scarf. Kevin knew that cats didn't have the highly attuned sense of smell that dogs did, but cats had better hearing, were usually craftier, and took a different view of the world, usually from a high perch. He went through the same process with Missy. Both animals sent back a sense of understanding to Kevin. Hank sniffed at the scarf, inhaling all of its complexities and nuances. Then he began to circle the room, starting from the center and gradually moving outwards. Missy circled the perimeter of the vault, jumping up on the old sink with several beer taps that had survived any and all renovations. Her ears flicked back and forth while she seemed to stare at nothing. Hank found Lily's trail and followed it directly to the same corner. There, Hank pawed at the place where the floor and the ceiling came together. Missy also patted the wall, her claws extended. They looked back at Kevin with worried pet eyes. Kevin understood that Hank and Missy were positive that Lily had gone this way, although they couldn't explain how when there was only a blank wall there. Kevin examined the wall carefully. It was perfectly seamless, with no sign of any door or entrance. But as he tapped along it, he heard a section ring hollow. "There's a vacant space here behind this part of the wall. It must be how Juanita and the doctor took Lily out of here."
"Good,"
Dorothy replied as she dug into her bag again.
"It's my turn to throw the grenade and—"
"Not so fast," Kevin warned. "We knew that this vault would probably withstand a grenade, but we have no idea what's on the other side of this wall. Let's try to see if there's some other way to get inside before we resort to high explosives." Kevin considered the vault. He rejected all of the new and shiny medical equipment. Obviously, it had only been brought in recently, but it would have been next to impossible for Juanita to replace an entire wall of a vault and make it look like it had been there since Prohibition. The vault had few other features. There wasn't even a lighting fixture. He directed his attention to the old sink and the beer taps. The beer taps immediately struck him as something strange. They might have been left as historical curiosities, but what had been their purpose originally? There was no obvious way to hook a keg up to any of them. Kevin took a closer look and pulled on a few of them experimentally. Nothing happened. There was some slight resistance, but that could have been due to age. Then he noticed something unusual. Along the pivot of each of the taps, several letters had been stamped, spelling out T-E-C-K. As the tap was pulled, a new letter would be revealed.
Tech? What does that mean? Dorothy wondered. Was it some kind of old brewery or a manufacturer?
Kevin thought back to the last time he entered the sewers under Chicago. Gangsters had once used them to move booze throughout the city. He had even spotted a plaque dedicated to Capone and Kincaid's construction. Al Capone was the city's most notorious bootlegger, and Kincaid, another mobster, was the great-great-grandfather of Lily's head of staff, Ruby Kincaid. Kevin looked again and realized that the T was unusually shaped, with each arm being equal in length. "Actually, I don't think that's the letter T at all," he replied. "I think it's actually a plus sign, as in this and that, or in this case." Kevin began pulling the tab, selecting each one to show the character as he gave it. C for Al Capone, the plus for and K for Kincaid. As soon as Kevin positioned the last tab for the K, the entire wall of the vault that Missy and Hank had been pawing at slid silently to the side about 4 feet, revealing a tunnel. Before Kevin could stop them, Hank and Missy shot off down the tunnel without a glance backward. They knew that their mistress was up ahead somewhere, and they weren't going to let her down. At that particular moment, Lily, bound and gagged, was being pushed out of the tunnels under Chicago and into a freight elevator, barely large enough to hold the operating table she was still strapped to. Juanita and Dr. Freudengras crowded beside her. Dr. Freudengras was still whining about having to leave much of his beloved medical equipment behind. "But there were so many lovely knives and scalpels. I had hoped to use that brand new bone saw you bought me." "Never mind about that now," Juanita snapped back. "You have the essentials, and that's what's important. Everything else we can get in my home spa suite." "You have medical-grade equipment in your own home spa?" Dr. Freudengras asked in surprise. "Of course. I wouldn't share a liposuction machine with another person. It's unsanitary," Juanita declared. Lily, still gagged, began shaking her head wildly as if trying to stop Juanita's plans just by the strength of her denial. "Like we care for your opinion," Juanita sneered at Lily. "In just an hour more, your babies will be resting comfortably in my own womb, lost to you and Kevin forever. Then you'll know exactly how I feel about losing my own sons to your murderous husband." Lily continued to shake her head, but Juanita and Dr. Freudengras ignored her. The elevator stopped. Dr. Freudengras pushed Lily's table out of the elevator. A platoon of armed guards waiting for Juanita there. "Go back down the tunnel and make sure that no one follows us," she ordered them. Dr. Freudengras followed Juanita as she strode across the marble floors to her home spa and plastic surgery suite. Lily caught glances of an indoor hot tub and steam room before they pushed her into a sterilized room for Juanita's medical beauty treatments. "Very nice," Dr. Freudengras said as he looked around. He wheeled Lily next to the table that Juanita was already climbing onto. "I've got my ether right here," Juanita announced, opening a panel in the table and taking out a mask ready to use. "But what about Mrs. Williams?" Dr. Freudengras asked. "We left the other bottle of ether back in the vault." "Oops, did we?" Juanita said in complete sarcasm. "Oh well, you know what they say. The show must go on." "Yes, it must," Dr. Freudengras agreed as he snapped on his gloves and picked up his scalpel. Lily's eyes went wide with horror as he turned toward her, light glinting off the blade. With the help of Hank the dog and Missy the cat, Kevin realized that there was a secret passage out of the vault that led to Juanita's house. Juanita sent armed goons to guard the tunnel while Dr. Freudengras prepared to finally start the operation that would rob Lily of her unborn babies. Led by Hank the dog and Missy the cat, Kevin and Dorothy ran through the sewers that connected the mayor's mansion to the rest of Chicago. They turned a corner and Kevin saw a glimmer of light ahead. What he saw by that light made him pull Dorothy back just in time. He gave a low whistle for the pets to rejoin him.
"What are you doing?"
Dorothy demanded in a hiss.
"This is no time for a rest break, Kevin. Suck it up and let's go."
She shifted the pack on her shoulder. To Kevin's astonishment, Dorothy had started stockpiling a wide variety of weapons and tactical gear. She was now armed to the teeth. "I don't need a rest," Kevin ground out. "But the way up ahead is guarded, probably by Juanita's goons. If we just go charging into them without a plan, they will slaughter us." Kevin dug through his trusty satchel of herbal ingredients. He pulled out a pre-mixed pill and handed it to Dorothy. "Swallow this. I know you're not used to fighting, and this will give you an edge." Dorothy looked like she wanted to argue, but it was a mark of her worry for her daughter that she swallowed down her anger and resentment toward her loser of a son-in-law, along with the pill. Kevin swallowed one of his own. Already he had reached out with his senses and discovered that Juanita's goons were ordinary. Since they didn't have any levels, Kevin wouldn't be able to use his leveled powers against them. They were going to have to fight this out the old-fashioned way. Kevin began to formulate a plan of attack. "The way I see it, the best thing for us to do is..." He stopped as Dorothy dug a canister marked tear gas out of her bag. "Hey, maybe that's not the best." But before he could finish, Dorothy had pulled the pin from the canister and thrown it around the corner as if it was a bowling ball. The canister skittered into the center of the group's goons.
"Where did that come from?"
one of them asked before the canister unleashed a dense cloud of tear gas. Soon the guards were coughing and choking. Blinded by tears, they tried to feel their way back to the elevator that went up to Juanita's house. But in the confusion, they only ran into each other and the walls. One of them had the sense to grab for his radio instead.
"Help! We're under attack down here. It's tear gas. Send reinforcements with masks and..."
The guard cut himself off in mid-sentence. With his eyes flooded with tears and in the dim light of the tunnel, there appeared to be some strange creature of mythology before him. It was the size and shape of a middle-aged woman, but its head seemed to be completely inhuman, with huge blank eyes and a long nose that snaked away somewhere. Its hands seemed to end in horizontal bars.
"What kind of a monster are you?"
he breathed.
"I am a mother,"
Dorothy declared through her gas mask.
"And you are the spineless wonders who are standing in my way."
She swung her nunchucks at him, delivering a sharp blow to the base of his skull. The guard slumped to the ground unconscious. Dorothy spun around, the nunchucks again whirring about her as several of the other guards tried to attack her through their tears. Although she'd never admitted to him, Dorothy was really enjoying the benefits of the power pill that Kevin had given her. She worked among the tear gas guards, taking aim at knees, elbows, and groins with evident delight. Kevin hung back. Not only had Dorothy not packed a gas mask for him, but she also seemed to be entirely capable of taking care of Juanita's goons without any help from him. Mother love. It was almost enough to make him regret not bringing her along on previous occasions when Lily had been kidnapped. With most of the guards down or unconscious and the tear gas dispersed, Dorothy took off her mask and turned back to Kevin.
"I don't know why you have to make such a big deal out of your fighting," she declared. "It's really not that difficult if you know."
But just then the elevator doors opened and a fresh contingent of goons stepped out. Juanita had evidently been keeping her A-team in reserve. These men were bigger and better armed than the ones Dorothy had easily defeated. Kevin had just enough time to step forward and join Dorothy. He stood stoically, his muscles coiled springs, ready to unleash a storm of blows upon their attackers. With blinding speed, the first goon lunged forward, fists swinging. Kevin sidestepped the blow and countered with a kick to the assailant's stomach, sending him crashing to the ground with a yell of pain. Another blow from Dorothy's nunchuck sent him into unconsciousness. The tunnel erupted into chaos as the remaining goons charged Kevin and Dorothy from all angles. Kevin and Dorothy fought back to back, guarding each other as they took out one man after the other. Hank the dog and Missy the cat did their part too. Hank wove among the combatants, tripping up Kevin's enemies and biting any soft, unprotected spots. Missy had found a high perch from which she launched herself at the faces of the goons, her claws targeting eyeballs and lips. Kevin and Dorothy refused to give ground despite the onslaught. Each strike Kevin delivered was exact, taking advantage of the weaknesses in the goons' defenses with deft precision. Dorothy was less precise, though no less effective, relying on her fury and the power pill Kevin had given her. But at last, that pill began to wane. Kevin turned just in time to see Dorothy being lifted into the air by the last attacker left. He was bigger than the others, and Kevin immediately sensed he had levels of his own. At least 5, and possibly more. "Hey, put her down," commanded Kevin. The last of Juanita's guards gave an evil grin and tossed Dorothy over his shoulder as if he was throwing away a gum wrapper. Dorothy flew through the air, hit the wall, and slumped to the ground, dazed. "Why don't you pick on somebody with your own levels?" Kevin demanded.
"I know who you are," the goon sneered. "You're supposedly the great Kevin Williams. Everyone's heard stories about your powers and levels, but I don't think they could possibly be true."
"Come over then, and find out," Kevin taunted, pulling his night dagger from his belt. Kevin funneled his power down through the blade, and it began to glow with an eerie blue light. The goon laughed.
"Like that, is it? Well, I have a few tricks of my own."
He drew a curved scimitar from his belt and channeled his own powers up and into it. It blazed up, bright enough to light the tunnel around them. The two men met with a roar. The clang of leveled steel echoed through the tunnel. Kevin didn't just fight with his night dagger. His fist blurred with blue fire as he landed blows with bone-crushing force, while his feet hardly seemed to touch the tunnel's floor. Kevin delivered devastating kicks that sent his adversary sprawling to the ground. Defeated, the goon retracted his powers and threw away his scimitar. Kevin stood down. It was not within his nature to harm another unnecessarily when that person was only doing the bidding of Kevin's actual enemy, in this case Juanita Hernandez, who had his beloved wife Lily captive. "Do you surrender?" Kevin asked.
"Yes, and I believe you really are as great as they say, Kevin Williams,"
the goon declared. But just then, a set of flying nunchucks descended on the defeated enemy's head, one right after the other. "He's not that great," Dorothy declared as she straightened from delivering the blows. "Or else he wouldn't be standing around chatting with you while my daughter and my grandbaby still need to be saved." At that very moment, Lily was still lying on the operating table that Dr. Freudengras had strapped her to. Even the impressive strength that had been growing with her pregnancy wasn't enough to break her bonds. When they had been forced to flee from their original location in the vault under the mayor's mansion, Juanita had brought them to the medical-grade spa suite in her home. Juanita refused to give Lily any ether for the procedure that would rob her of her unborn babies, but held the mask for herself at the ready. Still, Juanita wanted to be awake long enough to at least see Dr. Freudengras begin the fetal abduction procedure. Dr. Freudengras leaned over Lily's swollen belly, scalpel in hand. "And now to make the first incision," he declared in his Austrian accent. Lily's hand shot out, suddenly free from its manacle. She seized Dr. Freudengras's hand and squeezed it until he howled in pain and dropped to the floor. Lily tore the gag from her mouth. "Your days of doing incisions are over, Doctor," Lily declared. With the help of Hank the dog and Missy the cat, Kevin found that there was a secret passage out of the vault that led to Juanita's house. Juanita sent armed goons to guard the tunnel, and Kevin and Dorothy, working as a team for once, defeated the many attackers together. Meanwhile, Dr. Freudengras prepared to start the operation that would rob Lily of her unborn babies. But at the last moment, Lily got free enough to grab Dr. Freudengras's hand and squeeze. Hard. Dr. Freudengras stared at his crumpled fingers in horror. They stuck out in all kinds of unnatural angles. "You broke my hand," he howled. "My beautiful, precious surgeon's hand. I'll never hold a scalpel again."
"Good," Lily declared. "That will greatly reduce the amount of evil you can do in the world."
Lily was only half sitting up on the operating table, straining against the rest of her bonds. Back in the vault under the mayor's mansion, Juanita had held Lily's friend Nancy hostage to force Lily to allow herself to be manacled and tied to the operating table. Lily hadn't known Nancy had only been pretending to be her friend under Juanita's orders, and Juanita had killed Nancy in the end. Even the impressive strength that had grown with Lily's pregnancy wasn't enough to break her bonds, so she started to think of other ways to free herself. At some point in their trek through the sewers, Lily realized one of her earrings was coming loose. The earring was long and dangling, with many slim platinum bars that gave off a pleasant tinkling in normal times. Lily had realized that those bars could possibly be used to pick the lock of the manacles, if she could work the earring the rest of the way out of her earlobe. She had shaken her head wildly back and forth, trying to dislodge it. At the time, Juanita and Dr. Freudengras had mistaken the movement for a terrified denial of their plans and had laughed at Lily. But the motion had done its job. The earring slipped free of her ear, and Lily was able to wiggle it down to her fingers. From there, it had been only a matter of moments to trip the simple lock on the manacles. But Lily had to wait until Juanita and Dr. Freudengras weren't looking, or else her plan would have been for nothing. Now, with her plan in full motion, Lily ignored the doctor's howls of pain as she worked to unlock the second manacle. With both her hands free, she'd have the leverage she needed to break the rest of her bonds. But just as the lock clicked open, something came around her head, covering her mouth and nose. Lily opened her mouth to gasp and immediately got lightheaded. The thing on her mouth and nose was Juanita's ether mask, and Juanita had turned it up to full blast. Lily shook her head and bucked, trying to knock the mask free, but Juanita was behind her, holding it in place. Lily was still bound at the shoulders to the operating table and could barely get her hands up to her face. Juanita pressed the mask harder into Lily's face. Lily fought unconsciousness, desperate to break her bonds, but was losing strength by the second. She realized the more she struggled, the longer Juanita would keep the ether mask on her. Lily would have to play possum and hoped it wasn't too late. Lily let herself go limp. Juanita removed the mask and eyed Lily warily. "Why did you stop?" Dr. Freudengras asked. "She's too dangerous to be awake. Look what she did to me." He waved his mangled hand at Juanita. "You idiot," Juanita sneered. "I had to stop, or the ether could be harmful to the babies." "So what?" Dr. Freudengras demanded. "It is too late. I cannot perform the operation with my hand like this. We might as well kill her and her babies and get rid of the evidence. It will serve her right after what she did to my precious, lovely hand. Oh, the horror! The horror!" He reached to replace the ether mask with his good hand, but before he could touch it, Juanita picked up the nearest heavy item, a Himalayan rock salt humidifier, and brought it down on his head. Dr. Freudengras slumped to the ground unconscious. "I'm getting those babies one way or another," Juanita declared. She looked around her spa suite. The place was now a wreck. Dr. Freudengras's instruments were all over the place, and anyway, they were too small for what she now had in mind. Juanita stomped out of the room to find what she needed. Lily was only dimly aware of Juanita's attack on Dr. Freudengras. She had waited too long to pretend to be unconscious and had inhaled so much ether she was almost as insensible as Dr. Freudengras was now. She fought to stay awake, knowing that she and her babies were still in terrible danger. However, she could feel her own heart rate slowing, unable to pump the necessary oxygen to her brain. But then, in her twilight state, she became aware that her heartbeat was not the only one. Deep inside herself, she could feel two other heartbeats, faint, but also strong and fast. Lily was suddenly extremely conscious of the fact that her bodily systems were still completely and wholly intertwined with that of her children. To her, it felt like her precious babies were lending her the strength of their own brave little hearts. Fresh love for her children flooded her, giving her strength in fighting the effects of the ether. Lily's eyes fluttered open. She gulped in the air, desperate for anything that would help keep her awake. She grabbed at the rope, binding her shoulders to the operating table in both hands, and focused all of her energy. The rope snapped after an effort, and her bonds fell away. Lily sat up, her head spinning. She focused on the bonds around her knees and snapped those as well. She slid off the operating table, but her knees wouldn't hold her. Lily grabbed onto the table and waited for the dizzy spell to pass. Just then, Juanita hurried back into the spa suite. She froze in horror when she saw Lily out of her bonds and on her feet. "You!" Lily growled in a voice that was entirely unlike her normal sweet and polite tones. "You were going to steal my babies! You were going to leave me and my husband devastated! Now it's you that will be devastated!" Lily pushed off the operating table, upsetting it as she went. She lunged for Juanita, murder in her eyes. Juanita turned and fled. Lily gave chase, clinging to walls and door frames. She continued to fight the dizziness she couldn't entirely shake. But Juanita was not fleeing in a blind panic. She led Lily on a deliberate path through her mansion, making sure they ended up exactly where Juanita needed Lily to be. Lily almost caught up to Juanita in an upper hallway. Lily lunged forward and swiped at her mortal enemy just as Juanita ducked into a room. Her fingers missed her target by less than an inch. Lily would get Juanita the next time. Lily plunged into the room after Juanita and then froze. Lily stared in horror. At first, she thought this must be some strange trick her anesthetized mind was playing on her. She was in a nursery, obviously prepared for twin babies, a boy and a girl. One half of the room was decorated in blues and greens. Large letters on the wall spelled out the name Gallio. The other half was decorated in yellow and pink. On that wall was the name Andrea. The room was fully furnished with two of everything. It was stuffed to the gills with expensive toys. Giant stuffed animals as large as a person were propped in corners. A working train set snaked along the walls. Building blocks and tea sets were just waiting for their newborn little owners to come to play with them. It was the details that turned Lily's stomach. The building blocks had been arranged to spell out, "I hate Kevin Williams." The tea set included a little bottle marked poison with a tag that read, "For the Williamses." Two tiny figures were tied to the train set tracks. Even from here, Lily could see that they were exact reproductions of herself and Kevin. One of the giant teddy bears even seemed to be armed with a butcher knife. Juanita hadn't just planned to steal their children and raise them as her own. Juanita had planned to turn Kevin and Lily's babies into the Williamses' worst enemies. Disgust turned Lily's stomach, making the dizziness worse. Her eyesight blurred until she almost believed the teddy bear with the butcher knife was coming right at her. Lily stumbled back, lost her footing, and fell to the floor on her butt. She blinked and shook her head, regaining some clarity. But the teddy bear was still coming at her. Then, all at once, the bear fell away, revealing Juanita. She had been hiding behind it, but in her hand she still held the butcher knife. Lily suddenly realized that Juanita intended to use it on her. After Lily was taken by Juanita Hernandez and the evil Dr. Freudengras, Kevin and his mother-in-law Dorothy, along with animal friends Missy and Hank, loaded up on gear and headed into a series of underground tunnels in order to try and save Lily and her twins from a planned fetal abduction. As they continued on their pursuit, Lily was being accosted by knife-wielding Juanita in the nursery that the crazed woman had set up for the children she planned to abduct. Kevin and his mother-in-law Dorothy, breathless from the chaotic pursuit through the underground tunnels, arrived at the end of the dark ramp maze where an elevator shaft heading up out of the tunnel stood waiting.
"It's an elevator!" Dorothy exclaimed. "Kevin, do you see?"
"Yes, Dorothy, I see it too," Kevin replied. "Maybe that's our ticket up to Juanita's mansion."
"My Lily must be up there,"
Dorothy noted as she, followed by Missy and Hank, rushed over to investigate.
Kevin, do something!
Kevin pressed the controls, requesting the elevator to descend, but nothing happened. The buttons flashed red. Juanita must have locked it from above, Kevin reasoned.
Well, we can't just give up, Dorothy cried. Lily needs me.
Kevin surveyed the elevator shaft for any sign of an override or alternative access. There's got to be another way. Just then, Kevin had an idea. He stepped over to Dorothy's bag of supplies and quickly looked inside.
Be careful, Dorothy complained. I have everything in a precise order. Don't mix anything up.
Kevin's face lit up as he found what he was looking for. He rummaged through the bag, revealing a set of ropes, pulleys, and harnesses. We can climb up and out.
Climb? Dorothy repeated. I can't climb an elevator shaft. I get tired just sitting around the house. And I know you gave me one of your power pills, but that won't get me past my fear of heights.
Kevin didn't listen. He was too busy setting his plan into motion. I'll take care of it. I'll harness you to the ropes and use the pulleys to take the weight off you. Just don't look down. It'll get us both to the top. Dorothy was at a loss.
Can you do that?
Let's find out, Kevin replied. Kevin latched himself and Dorothy to the thick ropes. Hank, sensing the urgency, nestled himself onto Kevin's back, his fur tickling Kevin's neck. Missy, ever nimble, gracefully clawed her way onto Dorothy's back, securing herself for the ascent. The makeshift climbing party readied themselves, securing the harnesses tightly and ensuring their canine and feline companions were safely nestled. Kevin took the lead, attaching the ropes to a sturdy beam overhead. Here we go, Kevin offered. As they began their ascent, the tension in the confined elevator shaft was palpable, and the animals provided a surprising sense of comfort. Hank, ever the loyal companion, licked Kevin's ears, excited for the adventure. Missy, perched securely on Dorothy's back, surveyed the surroundings with the proverbial curiosity of a cat. The ascent was slow and deliberate, each pulls on the rope bringing them closer to the unknown dangers awaiting them above. The elevator shaft, usually a sleepy passageway, transformed into a vertical battleground for this unconventional rescue mission. Kevin's experienced hands guided the ropes with precision, ensuring a steady climb. Dorothy, focused on the goal of reaching Lily and making sure her eyes didn't look at the floor that was now far below them, called out.
Faster, Kevin, Dorothy shouted. Pull us up faster. Lily needs me.
Kevin was annoyed, but Dorothy was right. They needed to move faster. Lily needed them. The ascent in the narrow elevator shaft progressed steadily, and the makeshift team of Kevin, Dorothy, Hank, and Missy were determined to reach the top. The rhythmic sounds of their climbing echoed through the metallic confines as they neared the locked elevator above. Almost there, Kevin noted.
But the elevator is in the way, Dorothy noted. How do we get inside?
We can climb on top and sneak into the elevator compartment. Then I'll slide the doors open and we'll be set. Kevin continued to use his strength and knowledge of force, mass, and transferred effort to pull the four of them up. However, just as they were on the verge of reaching their destination, a sudden ominous screeching noise pierced the air.
What is that? Dorothy wondered.
The elevator car, seemingly tampered with by Juanita or her henchmen, started to descend towards them. It's the elevator, Kevin shouted. It's powered back on and heading right for us.
Oh no, Dorothy shouted. We'll be crushed.
Panic set in as the imminent danger became apparent. The team had to act swiftly to avoid being squished by the descending elevator. Kevin, with a command only a seasoned leader possessed, shouted, "Backtrack! Now! Down! Down! Down!" The urgency of the situation spurred them into immediate action. The ropes, pulleys, and harnesses that had been their lifelines now became tools for a hasty retreat. With a series of coordinated movements, Kevin reversed their ascent, rappelling downward as the elevator car descended with alarming speed. Hank clung tightly to Kevin's back, his instinctive understanding of the danger evident in the way he pressed himself close. Missy, perched on Dorothy's back, maintained her poise despite the chaos unfolding around them. She dug her claws in deeper, and Dorothy was too terrified to notice the pain from the cat's talons. The screeching of metal against metal intensified, echoing through the narrow confines of the elevator shaft. The danger loomed closer with each passing second. Dorothy, her eyes fixed on the descending elevator, barked out commands.
"Faster, Kevin! Save us faster!"
The elevator was getting closer. They weren't going to make it. Breathing heavily, Kevin's eyes scanned the elevator shaft for other options. He suddenly spotted a side vent, a potential escape route that would lead them away from the imminent danger. The challenge now was to swing into that side vent before the elevator crushed them. Thinking on his feet, Kevin, always agile and quick-witted, assessed the situation. "There's a way out over there. We swing into the side tunnel," he announced, preparing to make the daring move.
"Swing into a side vent?" Dorothy repeated. "That's crazy. We'll never make it in time."
With a confident leap, Kevin swung across the elevator shaft using the ropes and pulleys, landing gracefully in the side tunnel. However, the success of their escape hinged on Dorothy's ability to make the same maneuver. "You have to swing, Dorothy," Kevin shouted. "Just like I did. Don't look down. Don't think about the fact that if you fall to the stone floor below, you'll die." Even in this great moment of danger, Kevin could not help but get back a little of the nastiness that his mother-in-law had flung at him over the years. Dorothy, her bones protesting the strain of the ascent, hesitated.
"I don't know if I can," Dorothy cried. "Kevin, the elevator! It's getting closer! Kevin, help!"
Kevin, torn between the urgency of the situation and his annoyance at his always complaining mother-in-law, faced a critical decision. In that brief moment, he contemplated the possibility of Dorothy not making the swing and being crushed into goo. But the glimmer of humanity and the ingrained instinct to protect overcame the fleeting doubt. "No," Kevin muttered to himself. "I won't let Dorothy die. We're saving everyone." With a deep breath, he reached back, extending a hand to Dorothy. "Take my hand. We're getting out of here together." Dorothy, her resilience overcoming the frailty of her bones, which she was feeling again as the power pill Kevin gave her started to wane, seized Kevin's outstretched hand. With a coordinated effort, they swung into the side tunnel just as the elevator car passed beneath them. The elevator doors now opened and several more guards rushed out into the tunnels, oblivious to Kevin and Dorothy watching from above. The immediate danger now behind them, Dorothy wasted no time reverting to her usual self.
"Don't think for a moment that this changes anything, Kevin Williams. We're not done until my daughter and my grandchildren are safe."
Kevin smirked at her annoying predictability. "Agreed. Let's keep moving." The foursome, now back on track, resumed their climb up the elevator shaft. The goal of reaching Juanita's mansion and rescuing Lily and the unborn twins remained at the forefront of their minds. As Kevin and Dorothy stepped out of the elevator shaft and into Juanita's mansion, their senses were heightened and they instinctively prepared for whatever challenges awaited them. The room beyond the elevator was dark and quiet. They were in Juanita's spa. But where was Juanita? Where was Lily?
"Stay back!"
An angry voice with a thick Austrian accent shouted from within the darkness. Dr. Freudengras emerged from the shadows. His eyelids, bloated from the tears he'd shed about the hand Lily mangled, now obstructed his vision. The doctor moved in a confused panic, scalpel in each hand, slashing erratically at any shape or shadow that he perceived to be an enemy.
"I'll cut you open," the doctor shouted, blind and enraged. "I'll cut all of you open. It's operating time."
The spa, once a sanctuary for Juanita's beauty rituals, now became a chaotic arena as Dr. Freudengras bumped around, his distorted vision impairing his ability to distinguish a wall or a lamp from a human being. Hank, ever the vigilant companion, was hot on Lily's trail, his nose leading him out of the spa and deeper into the mansion. "Hank's got Lily's scent," Kevin noted as he and Dorothy evaded the doctor's wild slashes.
"Unfortunately, your insurance doesn't cover murder,"
the doctor shouted as he continued to swing his scalpel around.
"Your deductible will be huge."
Kevin turned to Dorothy. "The doctor isn't a threat. He's so crazy at this point, he's only going to turn his rage on himself and a wall. Let's go find Lily." Dorothy, fueled by a mixture of maternal concern and the desire for vengeance after overhearing Dr. Freudengras's sinister plans for her daughter, back when Dorothy eavesdropped on them in the vault, leaned toward Kevin.
No, you go. I'll handle this. I've got a score to settle.
But Lily, Kevin countered.
Take care of my daughter, Dorothy offered with sincerity. I trust you, Kevin Williams.
Kevin didn't know what to say. This was the first nice thing Dorothy had ever said to him. Dorothy's demeanor shifted back to annoyance.
I trust you to mess everything up, and I'll be there to help in just a minute. Now let me take care of this, she said as she motioned towards thrashing and flailing Dr. Freudengras.
Kevin sighed. Of course. With a nod, Kevin continued onward, leaving Dorothy to confront the confused doctor with his dangerous scalpel. Dorothy's protective instincts kicked in, and she reached into her bag of supplies and pulled out a large kitchen knife and a bazooka. Meanwhile, Kevin and Missy the cat followed Hank's lead, navigating through the mansion's lengthy corridors in pursuit of Lily. The distorted echoes of Dr. Freudengras's panicked movement and Dorothy's screeching voice lingered behind them as Kevin and his loyal pets ventured deeper into the heart of Juanita's mansion, their mission fueled by the urgency to rescue Lily and thwart the nefarious plots that threatened their family. After Lily was taken by Juanita and the evil Dr. Freudengras, Kevin, Dorothy, and their furry friends Hank and Missy loaded up on gear and headed into an underground tunnel that led to an elevator leading into Juanita's mansion. But Kevin had to find it in himself to save all, including his dismissive mother-in-law, from being crushed by the descending elevator car. Once inside the mansion, Dorothy stayed behind to get revenge on evil Dr. Freudengras, while Kevin and Hank went on in search of Juanita and Lily. Juanita, driven by a sinister determination, had leapt out from behind a giant teddy bear in the nursery she'd prepared for the twin she was going to have ripped out of Lily's womb and implanted into her own. Lily had recently been drugged with ether by her captor Juanita, and the effects left her groggy and increasingly disoriented. Juanita knew that waiting for the full effect of the drug would make it easier for her to overtake Lily and put her plan into action, even if Dr. Freudengras wasn't going to be much use to her anymore, with his hand crushed by Lily in a fit of rage.
Juanita,
Lily mumbled, her words barely audible.
You don't have to do this. My babies.
No, Lily, Juanita replied with a crazed expression. My babies. Juanita pointed towards two swinging cribs, adorned with blankets featuring pictures of Juanita's deceased adult sons. You might not take me for the sentimental type, but I saved my sons' cribs all these years, and now they're a symbol of what your husband, evil Kevin Williams, took from me when he murdered them. Tit for tat, Lily Williams. Dr. Freudengras might not be available to operate any longer, Juanita explained, but that doesn't mean I can't cut those babies out of you myself. Your twins are going to be my new babies to replace my dead sons. Juanita pulled a lever and dual incubators hummed to life. A steam machine hissed as Juanita prepared for the nefarious operation. The nursery was on the third floor of the mansion, and a giant window in the distance showed the calm Chicago skyline. Lily's eyes went to a long metal table where multiple large scalpels lay next to thick clamps and a suction hose. Lily was in trouble. She had to get out of there. It's all happening, Juanita gloated. Everything I've planned for so long is finally coming to fruition. Lily, her movements slowed by the effects of the ether coursing through her system, stumbled alongside Juanita, who reveled in the perceived triumph of her vengeful plot. You seem tired, Lily, Juanita noted. Why don't you go lay down on the operating table? Juanita, her eyes gleaming with a twisted sense of justice and with a horrible chuckle coming from her throat, directed Lily toward the center of the room where a cold metal slab sat waiting, a large light hanging overhead. Lily didn't move. I said lay down! Juanita pulled Lily over to the table and pushed her flat. "Soon, Lily," Juanita taunted. "Soon this will all be over." Juanita reveled in the final steps of her master plan. "Kevin took my babies from me, and now I'm going to take yours." In the midst of the ominous preparations, Lily, her mind clouded by the drugs, began to fully comprehend the gravity of the situation. The nursery, with its cold equipment and foreboding atmosphere, served as a stark reminder of the danger that loomed over her and her unborn children. As Juanita strapped Lily down to the operating table, the weight of the situation pressed upon Lily's hazy consciousness. The eerie surroundings heightened her sense of vulnerability, and the looming threat of the impending operation fueled her desperation to escape. Lily tried to pull herself up, but she didn't have the strength. The ether was too powerful for even Lily, who had grown in mental and physical fortitude during her pregnancy, to overcome. Juanita had secured Lily's arms to the table, and the drug stopped her from using her full strength to pull herself free. Lily was trapped. "Don't try to escape," Juanita noted as she stepped away toward the operating tools on the far side of the room. "There's nowhere left for you to run." Lily's mind struggled to break free from the fog induced by the drugs. As the eerie surroundings pressed upon Lily's consciousness, she summoned her inner strength in order to try to attempt to reason with the vengeful woman before her. "Juanita," Lily's voice wavered, the words stumbling over the ether's influence. "Mother to mother. Mother to mother. You don't have to do this. You don't want to do this." "Are you talking to me?" Juanita replied jokingly. "I can't even hear you." Lily focused. "Mother to mother. Mother to mother. I understand your grief." Juanita pushed back. "Shut your mouth. You don't know anything about me." "I do," Lily countered. "I'm a mother too, and the thought of anything happening to my children." Lily's eyes pleaded with Juanita, seeking a connection in the shared experience. "The thought is almost too horrible to bear." Juanita was momentarily taken aback by Lily's plea. Her crazed expression softened ever so slightly. "I know what it's like to feel that fear, that desperation," Lily continued, her words a poignant attempt to bridge the gap between their shared pain. "If something threatened my children, I'd do anything to protect them. I'd be just like you, Juanita. I understand." "Stop trying to relate to me," Juanita shouted as she prepped the scalpels. "We're not going to become friends. You're nothing but meat to me. I'm going to cut you open and take what your husband took from me." Lily's eyes went wide with terror at the thought. She wasn't getting through. She needed to change her approach. Lily took a deep breath. "What would they think?" "What would who think?" Juanita asked. "What would they think?" Lily repeated once again. "If they could see you right now." "Who?" Juanita repeated in building annoyance. "Who are you talking about?" Lily locked eyes with Juanita. "Your sons." A chill ran down Juanita's spine. Lily continued. "They wouldn't want you to go through with this. They wouldn't want their mother hurting someone. Not for them. Think about your sons, Juanita. Think about your sons." The air in the nursery seemed to grow heavier as Lily's heartfelt plea hung in the eerie silence. Juanita, grappling with her own grief and the unexpected empathy from the woman she sought revenge against, stood at a crossroads. I don't... Juanita tried to reply but seemed affected by Lily's argument. She shook off the momentary empathy. "No!" Juanita cried out, steadfast in her vengeful determination. "We're not the same, and don't you dare talk to me about my sons. I don't need your understanding or your sympathy. All I need is for Kevin Williams to suffer as I've suffered." "Juanita," Lily tried to counter. "Enough! This isn't about you, it's about my righteous vengeance," Juanita declared coldly, dismissing Lily's attempt to connect on a maternal level. As Lily's strength waned, the weight of the drugs pulled her back into a hazy unconsciousness. Juanita, seizing the opportunity, positioned Lily for the grotesque procedure she intended to carry out, the extraction of the unborn twins. Juanita initially planned to implant the twins and carry them herself to term so she could give birth to them and really truly be their mother, or so Juanita had it in her crazed mind. But now she knew that they were far enough along that she could rip them out of Lily's body and only need to have them in an incubator for a few days before she, Juanita, could once again be the mother of 2 babies. The air in the nursery thickened with tension as Juanita, fueled by a relentless need for revenge, prepared to enact her malevolent scheme. Lily, now defenseless and incapacitated, lay at the mercy of Juanita's ruthless plan. "Sleep, Lily," Juanita taunted. "We're almost at the end game now." Juanita flipped on the red operating lights, casting the room into a demonic glow. In a chilling display of callousness, Juanita slathed rubbing alcohol over Lily's pulsating belly. The sterile scent filled the air, adding to the unsettling atmosphere of the room. The fiendish look in Juanita's eyes hinted at the sadistic pleasure she derived from enacting her revenge. "Good," Juanita whispered. "Good and clean." With a surgeon's cold efficiency, Juanita gathered the necessary tools, scalpels, clamps, and other instruments gleaming ominously in the crimson glow. The dual incubators, once symbols of hope, now stood as silent witnesses to the impending violation of maternal bonds. As she prepared Lily's unconscious body for the impending surgery, Juanita whispered to herself, a haunting soliloquy echoing through the eerie space. "You took everything from me, Kevin Williams. Now you will feel the pain. The emptiness I felt all these years." Juanita started to reel as the words spilled out of her mouth. The pulsating red lights intensified the surreal nature of the scene, casting an otherworldly hue on the nightmarish tableau. Juanita's words became a symphony of revenge, the air heavy with the weight of impending darkness. Juanita finished her preparations. "Well now, it looks like we're ready to start cutting," Juanita declared as she raised the largest scalpel into the air. At that exact moment, Kevin kicked open the door and burst into the room. "Stop right there!" "Kevin!" Juanita cried, enraged by the sight. "You're too late!" Hank, Kevin's trusty pup, sensed Lily was in imminent danger and lunged forward, sinking his fangs into Juanita's calf. "Ah!" Juanita cried out in pain. The scalpel clattered to the floor as Juanita recoiled. The room echoed with Hank's fierce growls as he flung Juanita from side to side, preventing her from retrieving the weapon. Juanita regained her balance and kicked Hank, sending the canine flying backward. "Don't touch Hank!" Kevin called out as he stepped towards Juanita. Juanita quickly retrieved her scalpel and threw it at Kevin. Kevin dodged. Juanita picked up a second scalpel. "Stay back!" Juanita shouted, "or I'll kill Lily!" Juanita placed the scalpel above Lily's throat in a menacing fashion and locked eyes with Kevin. "Kevin Williams, my sworn enemy," Juanita decreed. "Today, no matter what else happens, I shall have my revenge." Juanita kidnapped Lily in hopes of stealing her babies before they were born. With the help of his trusty dog Hank, Kevin tracked down Juanita to her lavish mansion where she was preparing to operate on Lily herself. But as Kevin zeroed in on insane Juanita, she started to fling scalpels at him in her makeshift nursery cum operating room. Kevin stood across the room from his old rival, Juanita Hernandez. She held a large, sharp scalpel in her shaking hand and wore a crazed expression across her face. "Juanita," Kevin whispered. A massive moon-shaped window on the far side of the room framed the beautiful Chicago skyline in the distance. Perched high on the third floor of the mansion, Juanita's nursery became the stage for an impending confrontation. Lily lay unconscious, strapped down to an operating table in the center of the large macabre nursery, a vulnerable figure in the heart of a nightmarish tableau. The red emergency lights flashed above, bathing the nursery in a demonic glow as Kevin and Juanita faced off against each other, the air thick with tension. "Kevin Williams," Juanita repeated over and over again to herself, a motivating mantra for her unending rage. "You took everything from me," Juanita spat out, her voice a vicious whisper.
Now, it's your turn to feel the pain." Juanita's eyes bored into Kevin. The scalpel in her hand served as a menacing extension of her determination to make him suffer the same way that she had suffered. "Leave Lily out of this," Kevin replied. "She didn't do anything to you. I didn't do anything to you." Juanita's eyes went wide with rage. "How dare you? How dare you say that to me? I was a powerful businesswoman, but my success paled in comparison to the great Kevin Williams. You made me feel small." Kevin and Juanita began to circle each other as Juanita continued. "Kevin Williams, the head of Williams Media, the biggest media company in all of Chicago. I was a media mogul too, but Williams Media was so successful. How could I compete?" They continued to circle, Kevin's eyes darting around the space for some kind of tool he could use to deflect Juanita's blade. "Such a powerful businessman," Juanita spat out as she continued her rant. "So I sent my beautiful boy Andre to learn from you, and he did. He became one of your best creative executives, and you were so jealous of his success, so you did everything you could to destroy him." "No, Juanita," Kevin countered, still waiting for his chance to disarm the threat. "I tried to help your son. Andre was a good executive at Williams Media, but started to plot against me and my family. He joined forces with my evil cousin, Ethan, and the two of them carried out a brutal murder. Enzo Forbes was Andre's victim. Do you remember?" "Shut up," Juanita shouted. "Don't you say anything bad about my beautiful boy. Andre was perfect. If he killed someone, then that person deserved to die. He was my cherished son, my firstborn, my heir, my angel, and you took him from me." Andre was killed by Dalton Steele in retaliation for the many plots Andre hatched against me, including the murder of one of my innocent executives, Kevin pushed back. "And your son gave him no other choice." "Liar!" Juanita cried out. "Kevin Williams is a liar. You killed my Andre, but that wasn't enough for your bloodlust. You had to kill my baby D'Angelo, too." Juanita reached back and picked up a second scalpel. She now had two, one in each hand. "You put your son in harm's way, Juanita," Kevin pushed back. "You had your adult son, Andre, kidnap Lily, and I had to stop him before he could hurt her. The same way I'll have to stop you before doing the same. You're responsible for what happened to D'Angelo and Andre. Your choices led to their ends." "That's not true," Juanita screamed. "You'll pay for what you've done. You'll pay for everything." Juanita threw one scalpel at Kevin. He dodged the attack, but Juanita used the momentary distraction to lunge towards Lily's unconscious body. "Hank!" Kevin cried out. Kevin's call for Hank summoned the loyal dog back into the room. The faithful canine jumped into view and thrust his body into Juanita, knocking her back. Juanita recovered and was about to strike at Lily once again when Kevin suddenly stepped in front of his vulnerable wife. He stared down at Juanita. "Don't. This isn't about Lily," Kevin noted. "Focus on me this time. Only me. You want your revenge. You come and take it from me." Kevin motioned to Hank the dog, who jumped on top of the operating table where Lily was strapped down, and Hank immediately tried to help. The canine's instincts kicked in as he began gnawing at the ropes restraining Lily, a frantic attempt to free her from the impending danger. As Hank worked tirelessly to liberate Lily, Kevin maintained his focus on Juanita. The giant scalpel she still clutched in her hand gleamed ominously in the red light of the room. "I'll kill you!" Juanita volleyed at Kevin. In a decisive move, Kevin struck Juanita back, disrupting her advance. Juanita, fueled by rage and desperation, retaliated with a wild swing of the scalpel. Kevin, however, proved too agile, dodging the deadly blade with practiced precision. Juanita cried out as she thrust forward with her razor-sharp blade. Kevin used Juanita's own momentum to fling her into the far wall. Juanita recovered quickly and wiped the blood from her lip. Juanita was not a leveled fighter, so Kevin could not use his own levels against her, and he chose not to use his advanced skills to destroy her. But the difference in their battling abilities didn't stop a rage-fueled Juanita.
She scratched and kicked and swung her scalpel as she tried to strike Kevin in any way that she could. Kevin dodged and ducked and struck Juanita back once again. Juanita, realizing she couldn't compete with Kevin in hand-to-hand combat, found herself backed into a corner. Kevin's mastery of martial arts and swift reflexes became a formidable barrier against the distraught mother's relentless pursuit of revenge. A tense standoff unfolded in the crimson-lit nursery. The distant city lights framed the surreal clash between a husband and soon-to-be father fighting to protect his family and a mother consumed by vengeance. "It's over, Juanita," Kevin offered. "Give up." As Juanita grappled with the realization that victory seemed beyond her grasp, her eyes scanned the room for another solution. And then suddenly she realized what she had to do. In the tense confines of the nursery, Juanita, feeling the weight of her predicament, underwent a sudden transformation. The menacing glint in her eyes softened, replaced by an expression of remorse and vulnerability. A subtle mea culpa hung in the air as she began to speak, her words laden with the heavy burden of grief. "You're right," Juanita replied softly. "What am I doing? What am I trying to do? Your wife is going to be a mother. I'm a mother. I was a mother. I beg you, Kevin, forgive me." Juanita spoke of her deranged grief, a grief that had twisted her soul and clouded her judgment. In a desperate bid to convey the depth of her pain, Juanita gestured toward her surroundings. The room, once a battlefield, now transformed into a gallery of memories. She pointed to her son's favorite toys lying in the nearby cribs, remnants of their innocent childhoods. "Their faces," Juanita explained. "I had my son's face placed on these blankets as a reminder. Isn't that just too much?" As she shared these glimpses into her past, Juanita's facade of vengeance began to crumble. Kevin, torn between the grief-filled memories and the urgency of the present, grappled with the sudden shift in Juanita's demeanor. As Juanita's emotional plea unfolded, Kevin found himself grappling with conflicting emotions. Her sorrowful recounting of shared memories tugged at his heart, chipping away at the armor of anger that had shielded him. A momentary lapse in his resolve led him to consider a more lenient approach, a path that would involve delivering Juanita into the hands of authorities and seeking help for her mental anguish. "Forgive me, Kevin," Juanita pleaded. "Please, I beg you." "It's all right, Juanita," Kevin offered genuinely. "We'll take care of you. I'll make sure you get help. You've been through so much." "Thank you, Kevin," Juanita replied. "I don't know how I could ever repay your kindness." Just as Kevin began to entertain the possibility of mercy, a sudden twist in the narrative left him paralyzed with horror. Seeing the opportunity presented by Kevin's emotional vulnerability, Juanita's desperation escalated. In a shocking turn of events, she lunged towards the operating table, where Lily remained strapped in and unconscious. With a surge of strength, Juanita wheeled the table toward the large circular window at the far end of the room. Kevin's heart raced as he watched the unfolding nightmare, a desperate woman, an operating table, and the looming void beyond the window. "Juanita, no!" Kevin cried out. "We're on the 3rd floor." In a sickening twist of fate, Juanita, Lily, and the operating table crashed through the moon-shaped window and plummeted through the air. The 3-story descent unfolded in agonizing slow motion, a cascade of bodies hurtling toward the ground. The shock of what appeared to be a murder-suicide gripped Kevin in a vice of horror, the weight of his inaction crushing him as he witnessed the catastrophic plunge into darkness. Juanita had done it. She pushed Lily out the window into the abyss below. Juanita, it seemed, had finally gotten her revenge. Kevin and Juanita face off in the nursery she has prepared for the twins Juanita planned to rip from Lily's womb and raise as her own in revenge for Kevin's murder of her own beloved sons. In a standoff, Juanita tries to turn the tables by pretending to see the error of her ways, only then to push the gurney with Lily strapped to it out the 3rd-story window. Juanita, Lily, and the unborn twins are hurtling toward imminent death. "No!" Kevin cried out as Lily, Juanita, and Hank the dog, who had his fangs in Juanita's flesh, went tumbling out the third-story window. Kevin raced toward the window, his heart pounding out of his chest, desperate to witness the fate that had befallen Lily. As he peered over the edge, the sight that greeted him defied his expectations. Instead of the horrifying crash onto unforgiving concrete, the trio had descended toward an Olympic-sized pool below. Lily, Juanita, the operating table, and Hank the dog all collided with the water in a loud, fizzy splash. Relief washed over Kevin as he watched the ripples spread across the surface of the pool. "Thank goodness," Kevin whispered to himself. The relief, however, was short-lived as Lily, still trapped to the operating table and unconscious, began to sink below the water surface. "Lily!" Kevin called out. Reacting swiftly, Kevin took 2 steps back and then flung himself out of the window toward the water below. His form perfect, Kevin dove headfirst into the deep end of the pool. As he hit the water, Kevin's eyes first spotted Juanita. Displaying her keen survival instinct, Kevin watched as Juanita pulled herself out of the pool and fled. Kevin's attention swiftly shifted from the fleeing assailant to the dire situation unfolding below. Lily, in her weakened state, sank like a stone, her descent into the pool turning into a potentially fatal struggle against the weight of water and the heaviness of her pregnant form. Disoriented but still a good dog, Hank stayed with Lily, trying yet again to chew through the straps tying her to the gurney as they drifted deeper into the water. Kevin swam, desperate to reach Lily as she continued to sink. Amid the dimly lit pool, Kevin reached Lily only to discover a daunting challenge. Her hands, feet, and belly were all still strapped to the operating table. The table was heavy, made of thick steel and sinking fast. Panic surged and Kevin's urgency intensified. With each second ticking away, Kevin struggled against the straps, managing to free one before the need for air forced him to surface. In the haste to save his wife, Kevin hadn't even had the time to see if he had an underwater breathing pill in his satchel, let alone to take one if he did. Grabbing Hank the dog, Kevin pushed hard for the surface. Gasping for air, Kevin released Hank above the water and took in a single breath of precious oxygen before plunging back into the depths. Kevin dove again for Lily. Determination fueled his every move as Kevin wrestled with the remaining restraints, the water distorting his perception of time. Kevin persevered, undeterred by the weight of the water bearing down on him. Finally, the last strap yielded to his efforts, and with renewed vigor, he pushed toward the water's surface with Lily's unconscious form cradled in his arms. Breaking through the surface, they emerged into the cool night air. As they broke through from the depths of what could have been a watery grave, Kevin's first breath of air was a desperate gasp. Lily, however, remained unresponsive, a stark reminder of the difficult journey they still faced. The frantic race against time had only just begun as Kevin, dripping with determination, hoisted Lily's motionless form out of the pool onto the cool concrete beyond. "Lily!" Kevin cried out. "Lily, can you hear me?" Lily didn't respond. Her eyes were closed and she wasn't breathing. Kevin quickly moved to perform mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. However, the tranquility was shattered by an unexpected blow that struck Kevin's head from behind. Stumbling forward, Kevin turned to find a truly deranged-looking Juanita, now brandishing a long metal pool scraper as a makeshift weapon. "We're not done yet," Juanita cried. "I want my revenge." The scene at the water's edge shifted from a moment of resuscitation to an imminent confrontation. Kevin, soaked and vulnerable, had enough of Juanita. Lily needed him, and he didn't have time to play things safe anymore. Juanita charged, swinging the metal pole towards Kevin's head like a baseball bat. In a moment of pure instinct, Kevin didn't hold back. Using his full array of skills that had helped him through dozens of global battles even when he wasn't able to use his actual levels, Kevin, for the first time, unleashed a quick and powerful fury of destruction, all directed right at Juanita. He took hold of the pole and snapped it in two. Juanita swung at Kevin, and in 2 precise motions, Kevin broke her left arm and right leg. Ah! Juanita collapsed to the ground, screaming wildly in pain. With the threat of Juanita removed from the situation, Kevin turned back to Lily. As Juanita crawled away from the scene, Kevin again lowered himself to the ground in order to offer his beloved wife CPR. Time seemed to slow as Kevin initiated the life-saving ritual, his hands pressing firmly on Lily's chest, each compression a silent plea to defy the grasp of mortality. Drops of water cascaded from his disheveled hair as he bent over her, his breath caught between anxiety and resolve. "Come back to me, Lily," Kevin pleaded. "Come back to me." Kevin's satchel was soaked, and there was not enough time for him to refine a restorative pill to save Lily's life. He hoped that his knowledge of breathing and heart-in compression, all exerted in these frantic moments, would be enough to revive his wife. Without her, Kevin's life would not be worth living. With every compression, Kevin's whispered words intertwined with the rhythmic dance of his hands, a symphony of desperation echoing in the silent poolside air. Lily's life hung in the balance, a fragile thread threatening to snap with each passing second. Kevin checked Lily's pulse. Nothing. Her face was turning blue. The poolside glow cast shadows on Lily's still form, her lips cold and motionless, only intensifying Kevin's anguish. Yet he pressed on, his fingers tracing the contours of her chest, mapping the path to revival. "Stay with me, my love," Kevin repeated. "Stay with me." The fragility of life played out in this desperate dance, a dance where Kevin grappled with forces beyond his control. His wife was limp. She wasn't breathing. She was dead. "No," Kevin whispered. "No!" Refusing to give up, Kevin pushed on, continuing to try and revive the only woman he had ever loved. The taste of chlorine lingered on his lips as he pressed them to Lily's, initiating the breath of life that became the lifeline between survival and surrender. His whispered declarations of love and need resonated in the stillness, a poignant counterpoint to the deathly grip of uncertainty. "I can't do this without you," Kevin spoke in between shared breaths. "I need you, Lily. I need you to fight. Not just for you, not just for me, but for our babies. Fight, Lily. Fight." Time ceased to be a linear construct. It transformed into a relentless adversary, taunting Kevin as he desperately tried to save his pregnant wife. Each moment became an eternity as he fought against the impending darkness. Lily still wasn't breathing, but Kevin refused to give up. He couldn't lose her. He pressed his mouth to hers one last time, when a gasp, a small but profound exhalation of life. Lily's chest rose with newfound breath, the air a testament to the tenacity of love. As Kevin withdrew from the life-giving kiss, Lily's eyes fluttered open, a fragile glimmer returning to her gaze. "Lily," Kevin whispered. "Kevin?" Lily responded, disoriented. How did I get outside? Why am I so wet?" "It's a long story," said Kevin as he smiled and wrapped his arms around his wife. "But it has a very happy ending." In the charged atmosphere, relief washed over Kevin's and Lily's faces, their entwined hands finding solace in her womb, where the unborn twin stirred with newfound vitality. "Do you feel that?" Lily asked. "The twins are kicking." As the tension released its grip, Lily and Kevin embraced the sweet, fragile victory. Amid the poolside relief, a disheveled Dorothy emerged from within Juanita's mansion, covered in blood. "Mother?" Lily looked on curiously. Kevin had left Dorothy to deal with Dr. Freudengras, and by her blood-soaked appearance, it seemed that she had. "Dorothy?" Kevin inquired. "What happened with Dr. Freudengras? Why are you covered in blood?" Dorothy seemed annoyed by all the questions. "Don't worry about him. He won't be bothering my family ever again." "Did you murder him?" Kevin asked. "Why are you asking me so many questions?" Dorothy countered. "I have questions for you too. Why did you let my Lily get into the pool? She'll catch a cold, you idiot." Dorothy's disapproval echoed in the night, the incongruity of her words adding a surreal layer to the already strained atmosphere. Sirens wailed in the distance, the approaching police heralding the inevitable aftermath of the night's chaos. Kevin, unfazed by Dorothy's peculiar demeanor, made a decisive suggestion. "Let's go home," Kevin proposed, the weight of recent events lingering in the air. As they turned away from the poolside drama, the Chicago skyline waited in the distance. Kevin lifted Lily, and with Hank, Missy, and Dorothy in tow, the group made their way out from the mansion towards the quiet streets beyond. Lily squeezed Kevin's hand as they walked. They were safe. Kevin had saved the day once again. Kevin battled and defeated crazed Juanita Hernandez, his longtime business rival and enemy, who wrongly blamed Kevin for the deaths of her two sons. Juanita's lengthy scheme to stage a fetal abduction that would have yanked Lily's two unborn twins out of her womb and put them in Juanita's hands to raise as her own was finally at an end, and Kevin, with Dorothy's help, had saved Lily's and the twins' lives. After the chaos at Juanita's mansion and Lily's near-fatal experience strapped to a gurney and drowsy from the ether at the bottom of Juanita's pool, where Kevin, of course, saved her life, everyone needed to rest and regroup. Kevin, Lily, Dorothy, Hank the dog, and Missy the cat made their way back to the mayor's estate, while sirens continued to blare in the background. Kevin was amused to think about what the police would find at Juanita's mansion. Would they find Juanita there herself, still wailing about plans for revenge against Kevin for the murders of her sons? Would the police be able to make any sense of the spa-turned-operating room? What about the nursery that Juanita had turned into a hate-filled museum that was to turn the twins she planned to steal into enemies of their own biological parents, Kevin and Lily? Would the police find Dr. Freudengras's body lying amid the wreckage? Kevin didn't want to pursue it any further with Dorothy, but he was fairly certain that Dorothy's own sense of mother love had led her to murder the man who was going to oversee the fetal abduction for Juanita. Kevin put Lily to bed in their plush upper-floor bedroom. He patted Hank on the head and used his powers of communicating with animals to thank him for all he and Missy the cat had done in his quest to rescue his beloved wife from her attackers and to keep her from danger. Needing a moment to rest and to think, Kevin went downstairs to a quiet den where there were logs crackling in the fireplace. Just as he sat in his easy chair, his telephone rang. Kevin answered the video call on the first ring when he saw the caller was Brett Stewart. The video clicked on, showing Brett with Katja Rafferty hovering in the background. Brett was the head of the group of freedom fighters known as Myriad. Katja Rafferty was headmistress of the school that Kevin started in Washington, D.C. Together, they had been helping Kevin locate and recruit children from among the Foundation who had the potential to be the next keeper of the White Tower of the Upper Realm. On Kevin's first adventure to the Upper Realm, an interloper had caused so much damage to the stability of that plane of consciousness that it permanently damaged the health and lifespan of the current keeper of the White Tower, a woman named Elohi. Elohi had charged Kevin with finding her successor before she died. It was critical for Kevin to find all 7 potential candidates and get them to the Upper Realm. There, they would go through a series of tests to determine which of them would be Elohi's successor. But if Kevin failed to find all 7 before Elohi died of her weakened condition, the Upper Realm would be in danger of falling. Without the influence of the Upper Realm to help experts achieve mastery and to hone and perfect their skills, the Foundation would be prey to enemies like the Pinnacle, which had long been attempting to invade again and exert their evil influence throughout. Kevin wasted no time. "Brett, do you have another candidate for the next keeper of the White Tower?" "Yeah, think we found your next keeper, kid," Brett grinned. "You know about the Maldives, right?" "Sure," Kevin answered. "They're an archipelago off the coast of Sri Lanka. They're some of the lowest-lying islands in the world and one of the places most vulnerable to rising ocean levels due to global warming." "Should have known you'd already have all the info on them," Brett smiled. "The Maldives also have some of the most expensive hotels in the world. and developers are always looking to expand, which pushes local people out onto lower islands that are more vulnerable to erosion and rising sea levels. But there's one of those islands that somehow isn't being threatened in the same way. And you think one of our potential next keepers has something to do with it? Kevin asked. Yes, I do, Brett replied. Check out the video I just sent you. Kevin opened the video. It showed a stormy day on a tropical island. Dark skies poured down buckets of rain. Waves rose and fell with crushing force, but none seemed to touch the sandy beach. There was no more than a drizzle despite the heavy downpour in the distance. The fierce waves collapsed to no more than a low tide lapping at the sand. At first thought, I thought this video was nothing more than a weird isolated weather phenomenon, Brett continued. But then, you saw the kid off to the side, right? Kevin interrupted. Good eye, Brett replied. I almost missed him entirely. Off to the side of the beach was a boy in his late teens, sitting under a tree. He wasn't doing anything special, but Kevin could make out a faint blue glow around the boy. It was the same kind of glow he had seen other potential keepers of the White Tower of the Upper Realm display when they were using their natural level powers. So far, Kevin had been able to figure out quickly what areas the potential keeper kids' level powers had applied to. One girl, Pamela, was a talented fighter. Another, Walter, was a gaming genius. The third candidate that Brett found and whom Kevin had helped to get to the Upper Realm, Angel Bebe, was forced by her evil stepmother to be an influencer. But her real skill was the human insight and writing ability that led her to write fantastical novels and stories in a flash. Kevin had no idea what this boy's talent might be since the boy was just sitting there. But there was one thing Kevin was sure of. I think this is definitely our kid, Kevin declared. Do you have any other information on him? No, Brett shook his head. All I have are the coordinates of this island. It's such a tiny out-of-the-way place that I couldn't even find an official name for it. Then we'll just have to go there to find this boy ourselves, Kevin decided. I just saved. Kevin started to tell his friends Brett and Katja about the saga with Juanita and the fetal abduction in Dorothy and Lily at the bottom of the pool. But he realized the story, a crazy one even by the standards of Kevin's life, would take too long. It would, though, be perfect for them to discuss as they flew back across many oceans. Meet me at the airport as soon as you can. I'll get us a plane and we'll head to the Maldives to find this kid, Kevin blurted out. Kevin was never one to waste anyone's time, especially when he had to find the next potential gatekeeper of the White Tower in the Upper Realm. Kevin had often seen the contrast between the people who had money and the people who didn't, but rarely had he seen it in such stark contrast as when he arrived in Malé, the capital city of the Maldives. Gorgeous luxury hotels crowded the oceanfront where once fisherfolk brought in the bounty of the sea. Beaches were crammed with cabanas that cost $10,000 a day to rent. The harbor was so crowded with luxury super yachts that it was hard to see the water. But beside all this were the humbler docks where thousands of people were ferried on and off the capital island from tinier, poorer isles. These people couldn't even afford to live on the same island where they were employed. They worked mostly in service jobs to the rich and famous tourists who jockeyed to show off their incredible wealth to their peers. As more and more islands flooded or were eroded into the sea, there were few places the working people could live, and their journeys to and from work grew longer and more perilous. Kevin spoke to several ferry captains. Fortunately, he still had his incredible facility for language, and was soon conversing in Devehi, the language of the majority of the locals. Within an hour of landing on the island, he was speaking it as if he were a native. One ferry captain shook his head when Kevin showed him where they wanted to go on the map. I know that island. It has been uninhabited for a long time, but just recently, a small community threw together some rough huts. Many of the people there worked at the Henningford hotels. The captain pointed to one of the biggest hotels that could be seen rising above the others. Everyone knows Henningford hotels, Kevin agreed. They were one of the biggest luxury hotel chains in the world. The owner, Leone, was known as the Dame of Pain for her ruthless business practices and sharp tongue. But you said they worked at the hotels, Kevin observed. They don't anymore? I can't be sure of that, the captain replied. All I know is that when I stopped today, nobody came to come here. They were all very adamant that they needed to stay on the island, even though it would mean losing their jobs, assuming they still had them. Kevin returned to Brett and Katja and reported what he had learned. Sounds like some kind of trouble, Katja agreed with Kevin's assessment of the situation. We better get over to that island as soon as possible. Kevin offered the ferry captain enough money to cover his expenses for a year to take them over to the island immediately. The captain agreed, but no amount of money would convince him to wait for them. People rely on me to get to and from their homes on other islands, the captain explained. All the boats are overcrowded, so they can't take another one. If I'm not here, people will have to sleep on the streets. Kevin respected the captain's devotion to the people he served and doubled his fee anyway. Kevin was sure he, Brett, and Katja could find another way back to the capital island once they had located the next potential keeper. After a rough boat trip, Kevin, Brett, and Katja stepped off the boat onto the small dock Kevin had seen in the video Brett had sent him originally. They waved goodbye to the captain as he left and looked around. There was no sign of anybody. Just up the beach, the tiny island was covered in thick foliage. Brett pointed to columns of black smoke drifting up from further inland. That smoke could be from the cook fires. Maybe that's where the community is. Something about the smoke struck Kevin as ominous, but he decided it was as good of a place to start looking as any. Kevin, Brett, and Katja pushed their way through the foliage. Suddenly, a scream of terror rang out. Instantly alert, Kevin and his friends dashed ahead, anxious to help whoever had screamed. They broke into a clearing. A dozen small structures had been cobbled together from whatever the community had been able to find or scrounge. That was as Kevin had expected. What he hadn't expected was a dozen bulldozers all lined up and ready to plow the shacks into the ground. These bulldozers had been the source of the smoke. They puffed and belched oily black smoke into the clean ocean air. Kevin had been right that the smoke was a bad omen. An older woman had chained herself to the door of one of the structures. She stood stoically facing down the bulldozer aimed directly at her. Other members of the community raced around, trying to convince the drivers to stop, pleading for understanding or mercy. They were ignored. Impatient, the driver of the dozer pointed at the old woman and released the brake. Right in front of Kevin's horrified eyes, the heavy machinery leapt forward to crush the helpless old woman. Just after rescuing Lily from Juanita Hernandez and the planned fetal abduction, Kevin learned from Brett Stewart that the latest candidate to be the keeper of the White Tower in the Upper Realm had been found, and the two men as well as Katja Rafferty jetted to the Maldives island to find the boy amid a battle between the natives and hotel developers who were ready to bulldoze down entire villages. The heavy bulldozer leapt forward to crush the helpless old woman along with her humble home. Without a thought for his own safety, Kevin jumped directly into its path and yelled, "Stop!" in such a loud and carrying voice that the bulldozer driver slammed on the brakes by instinct. The driver lurched in his seat at the sudden stop. "Here now," the driver yelled. "What do you want to be jumping in front of a bulldozer like that for? Someone could have gotten hurt." Kevin ignored the driver and approached the old woman. "Pardon me, ma'am. I'd like to help you," he said politely. The old woman glared at Kevin. "You're one of those annoying interfering Americans, aren't you? Always sweeping in thinking you're going to do so much good, but really you have no idea what's going on and just make a bigger mess and avoid doing anything difficult or dangerous yourself." "My mother-in-law does think I'm annoying, but I do try to be genuinely helpful when I can," Kevin answered modestly. "And I'm not one to shy away from difficulty or danger." The woman looked him up and down, not quite believing Kevin. "If that was really true," she continued, "then you'd be the one here chained to my little place and I could sit down and rest my old bones." "I'd be happy to," Kevin replied. He pulled the stool near the door and easily broke the rusty chain the old woman had used to chain herself to the door. He then escorted her to the stool and made sure she was seated comfortably before he took her place at the door and fastened the remaining section of chain around himself. "There now," Kevin said. "Hopefully this convinces you of my good intentions to be of real use and help here."
"You're not helping me none," the bulldozer driver yelled in frustration. "We've got a schedule to keep. These shacks were supposed to be matchsticks half an hour ago."
He turned to one of his assistants.
"Call in the boss lady. I can deal with these locals, but do-gooder Americans are above my pay grade. I can't run him down without her saying so."
The assistant ran off to go find the boss lady. Meanwhile, Kevin waved Brett and Katja in close with one chained hand. He spoke in a whisper so the drivers couldn't hear. "We need to make sure these bulldozers can't knock down these structures." Brett cracked his knuckles eagerly.
"We can take out these bozos easy, Kevin."
Katja rolled her eyes at his eagerness for violence. "But that won't stop more drivers coming and using the bulldozers to knock this whole place down." "I was thinking of a more permanent solution," Kevin replied. "At least as far as the bulldozers go. If we can drag this out long enough, they'll have to refuel their tanks." Brett nodded, catching on.
"So if we can find where they're refueling and tamper with that,
then these dozers all become the island's biggest garden planters," Kevin finished. "See if you can find some source of sugar and add that to the fuel. It will clog the filters and gum up the fuel injectors." "We're on it, Kevin," Katja replied, and she and Brett faded away into the foliage surrounding the little community. Kevin turned his attention back to the old woman. "Can you tell me what's going on here, ma'am?" Finally convinced, the old woman nodded.
"Our little group came to this island not too long ago. Our last island was bought by an international hotel corporation because it wasn't affected as much by erosion and tied to some of the other islands in the area. They forced us to move on. We came to this island because nobody else wanted it."
"If this is your home," Kevin answered, "then they can't just steal it right out from underneath you."
"I can if I own the island," announced a shrill voice.
Kevin instantly recognized the woman coming toward them at the head of the small entourage. She wore so much chunky gold jewelry, he wondered how she stood upright under all its weight. She also carried a walking stick topped by a diamond as big as the Ritz, or rather as big as the Henningford Hotel flagship hostelry, the Henning home in New York. Of course, this was Leone, the Dame of Pain Henningford, the international hotelier with a nasty reputation and a worse attitude.
"And I do own this island," she declared. "It's true," the old woman said when Kevin looked confused. "We don't even have squatters' rights here, but everything we own is in these shacks. We would have gone quietly if they had given us time to gather up our things and make arrangements with the ferry boat captain. But they showed up out of the blue, and we've been trying to hold them off ever since."
Kevin looked at Leone. "Maybe I can help mediate the situation," he began. "My name is—"
"Kevin Williams," Leone sneered. "Of course I know who you are. We billionaires have to keep a close eye on each other. Though there are far more billionaires now than is really proper, it's almost as if any idiot with $1,000 million in assets think they can join the club."
Kevin ignored this ridiculous statement and said in his most calm tone of voice, "Since we know each other, I'm sure we can find a reasonable solution to this problem."
"This isn't about reason, this is about business."
Leone shrieked and waved her cane indiscriminately. Several members of her entourage ducked instinctively. The ones hanging further back showed bruises from the previous times their reflexes had failed them.
"This project is already months behind schedule,"
Leone screeched. Kevin frowned. "How can it be months behind schedule if your bulldozers just arrived here?"
"Because this isn't the first island we've tried to build on, you nitwitted numbskull," Leone growled. "The last one sank before we even got started building." "That was the island she ran us off of last time," the old woman added. "And there was another island before that," Leone added. "Which she also ran us off of," the old woman said wearily. "I swear she's spying on those of us who work at her hotels. Every time we find an island that doesn't seem likely to be knee-deep in seawater every high tide, Leone sweeps in and buys it out from under us. Of course I'm spying on you, Leone snapped. I spy on all my employees. It's just good business. Her entourage eyed each other suspiciously. Meanwhile, Brett and Katja had circled around the encampment and followed the swath of destruction the bulldozers had made to the far side of the tiny island. There they found a construction base camp had already been set up. Although there were only a few dozen workers, the place was obviously expecting hundreds more laborers for a major construction project. There were equipment sheds, an employee lounge, and most important to Brett and Katja, a fuel depot with a huge tank of diesel gas and a smaller tanker truck to run the fuel out to the field. Now all we need is a large supply of sugar, Brett observed. They headed for the employee lounge, which was well stocked with tea and coffee supplies. Brett found a large bag of sugar. This should do it. But Katja shook her head. Sugar doesn't dissolve in gasoline the way people think. We need sugar already suspended in an ethanol solution. Brett scanned the shelves. I don't think a lot of people like ethanol in their coffee. No, Katja agreed, but they do like it in their cocktails. She held up a gallon jug of concentrated premixed daiquiris. Katja and Brett made several trips, hauling the jugs of daiquiris out to the fuel depot. Brett had to kick several empty jugs out of his way when he reached to open the intake port on the big tank. He was so focused on finishing the task that he didn't notice the person creeping up behind him until the cold muzzle of a rifle poked into the back of his neck. Don't move. The man, one of Leone's highly trained and highly armed guards, growled at Brett. Brett made a show of slowly raising his hands. One held a half-full jug of lime daiquiris. In one swift motion, Brett dashed the contents into the guard's face, hitting him square in the eyes with the sticky citrus cocktail. The guard howled in pain. Brett easily disarmed the guard. Katja had gone for the last of the alcohol in the employees' lounge. Katja, watch out, he yelled. There might be armed guards, there might be. Brett cut himself off as Katja was marched around the fuel tank at gunpoint. 8 more guards surrounded her, all of them heavily armed. Thanks, Brett. I think I figured that out. Katja sighed. The guards quickly included Brett in their coverage while one of their members handcuffed Brett and Katja securely. Brett and Katja exchanged looks. Kevin was now on his own. Kevin, Brett, and Katja arrived at a tiny nameless island in the Maldives in search of the next gatekeeper candidate. There they found bulldozers poised to tear down the homes of the community. Kevin sent Katja and Brett to sabotage the bulldozers while he created a distraction. But while Kevin was meeting the hotelier, Leone, the Dame of Pain Henningford, who wanted to take over the island, Katja and Brett were captured. Leone glared at Kevin. I don't believe you came to this island by chance, Kevin Williams. Everybody knows you've got your fingers in a lot of pies. Kevin shrugged, setting the rusty chains that pinned him to the door of the shack clinking. It really was a dumb chance, but if you just give the people here a chance to gather their things, we can all move on with our lives. One member of Leone's entourage leaned in close to her and whispered. Leone suddenly went white with rage. They were trying to do what? She screeched and waved her diamond-topped walking stick around in dangerous arcs. That's it! No more Miss Nice Developer! She turned furious eyes on Kevin. My guards just caught your friends trying to sabotage my main fuel depot tank. Just now? Kevin asked with an interest. As in within the last 2 minutes. Of course just now, you dopey do-gooder, Leone snarled. Do you think they'd hide something like that from me? You're obviously not here on just some crusading mission. You're trying to stop my hotel so you can take this island for yourself. I'm really not, Kevin promised with all sincerity. If we could just... Shut up, Leone ordered. If you won't admit it, I'll get all of your plans out of your friends. She turned to the bulldozer operators. Gas up those dozers. You're going to knock down these hovels and keep going until this entire island is as flat as a pancake.
But what about this guy? The bulldozer driver pointed at Kevin.
Run him down if he doesn't have the sense to move.
Leone turned to go, but then glared back over her shoulder.
On second thought, run him down anyway.
The old woman whose shack Kevin had chained himself to looked worried as Leone's entourage started issuing a flurry of orders via satellite phones and walkie-talkies. Within minutes, a small tinker truck had trundled into the clearing, and the bulldozers lined up to refuel.
Look, maybe this wasn't such a good idea, the old woman said to Kevin. These guys look like they mean business, and it's just stuff.
But it's your stuff, Kevin replied, and I don't like bullies. I'll stay here until you and the others remove everything you need from inside. The locals scrambled to carry their belongings from the shelters, packing them into bags, boxes, and whatever else they could find. But before they could finish, the bulldozers were back in place and ready to go.
I take back what I said about useless Americans, the old woman begged Kevin. Now will you move?
Kevin glanced back over his shoulder. You still have pictures of your grandchildren in there, and that looks like a lovely handmade quilt. You still need more time.
You're out of time now, the bulldozer driver laughed. We're gassed up and ready to go.
In his private thoughts, Kevin had been sure Katja and Brett had succeeded in carrying out their plans to sabotage the bulldozer's fuel. He knew how effective and efficient they were, but as the bulldozer bore down on him, he wondered if he had maybe put a little too much faith in them. Leone had one of the biggest super luxury yachts ever made anchored just off the coast of the island. It was really more like one of her hotels set afloat than a private pleasure craft. But here, in the lowest bowels of the vessel, it was as grimy and dank as any other ship. Katja and Brett were handcuffed and dragged before an open hatch. Through the hatch, they could see the filthy bilge water sloshing around. Leone's guards still had them at gunpoint. Because none of the guards had levels, Katja and Brett couldn't use their leveled abilities against them. Leone stood before them glaring.
What are Kevin Williams' plans to take over my island? She demanded. Is he going to build a pharmaceutical outpost here? Use it as a filming location for Williams Media? Or is he going to start being one of my competitors on an international scale? I know he already has his hands in some of my competitors, like the Salix Leaf Hotel in Chicago.
Like we'd tell you if any of that was true, Brett snarled.
Leone bashed Brett's head with her diamond-topped walking stick. Guarded and cuffed, Brett wasn't able to duck in time and took the savage blow to his temple. He fell over and into the filthy bilge. Despite being handcuffed and fully dressed, he immediately surfaced in easily tread water. Leone turned her glare on Katja and raised the walking stick again. Not that any of that is true, Katja said quickly. She was better at diplomacy than Brett. As headmistress of the Williams School, she had learned to handle irate parents firmly but fairly. Kevin has no plans to take over this island at all. We came here on an unrelated matter. Kevin was just trying to help the community have the time to gather their possessions. Leone lowered her walking stick.
That's just about what Kevin told me, too.
Katja relaxed.
But you still were trying to sabotage my hotel. Nobody gets in my way and lives to tell about it.
Leone finished with a scream. Katja was expecting another blow from her walking stick and was ready to duck, but instead Leone nodded to the guards, and one shoved Katja forward. She then followed Brett into the bilge. Leone slammed the hatch closed on them.
The waves will get rougher as the tide comes in, one of the guards warned Leone. We'll have to take on more water and the bilge will fill up. Even if they can tread water for hours, they'll drown before too long.
Good, Leone replied. That's what should happen to rats at sea.
The bulldozer driver laughed maniacally as the huge machine bore down on Kevin. Kevin stoically stood his ground, keeping his faith in Katja and Brett. The bulldozer was 10 feet away, then 5, then 2. And with a cough and a sputter, it died entirely. All around the clearing, the other dozers died one by one. The community members who had scampered away to where they had piled what belongings they could gave a cheer.
What the devil is this? The driver wondered, pounding on his machine's controls. Miss Henningford said she stopped the saboteurs before they got to the fuel depot's tank.
Kevin freed himself from the rusty chains and marched to the little truck that had resupplied the bulldozers. He lifted the pump hose and sniffed it. He smelled coconut sugar and rum. Kevin smiled. Knowing any immediate refueling would take place from the truck, Katja and Brett had wisely sabotaged that fuel before attempting to ruin gasoline in the main tank. He left the bulldozer drivers arguing over the mysterious shutdown of their equipment and returned to the old woman. That should give you plenty of time to gather your things, Kevin told her.
I don't know what brought you to this little speck in the ocean, the old woman said, but I'm glad it did.
Actually, I'm looking for this boy. Kevin showed her an enhanced screenshot taken from the video that Brett had sent him. Do you know him? The woman nodded.
Of course. That's Majid. He's an orphan, but our little group took him in a few years ago. He has quite the knack for finding us the best islands. Unfortunately, we don't have the knack of keeping them, thanks to that monster of a developer.
Where's Majid now? Kevin asked. In his private thoughts, he wondered if Majid's powers were related to the weather. That would explain why the islands he found for his group weren't as affected by the tides and erosion while they were living there. It also explained why Leone had so many difficulties with those issues once he left.
He took our only little sailboat and went to find us another island when we realized we'd have to move, she explained. He should have been back long ago. Maybe he needed to go farther than ever to find us somewhere safe.
Continue with your packing, Kevin advised. I'm going to save my friends and then we can look for Majid. Kevin followed the trail to the main construction base on the far side of the island. He recognized several members of Leone Henningford's entourage roaming around. He grabbed the first one he saw and dragged him behind a building. Where are my friends? He demanded. The man's nerves were already shot. It was understandable that working for a powder keg like Leone would put a strain on anybody. Kevin wasn't surprised when the man burst into tears.
They took them, he said through his sobs.
Yes, I know, Kevin growled. But where were they taken? Which building are they being held in? All of the buildings were flimsy prefab construction. Kevin could tear a hole in any one of them and free his friends that way if he had to.
Not in a building, the hysterical man sobbed. There,
he pointed out to sea. Kevin looked and saw the biggest yacht he had ever laid eyes on. His excellent vision showed him there were armed guards keeping watch on every deck. The yacht was like a floating fortress. How could he ever break his friends out of there? Kevin, Brett, and Katja arrived at an island in the Maldives seeking their next gatekeeper of the upper realm candidate, but instead they found bulldozers poised to tear down the homes of the community. Kevin sent Katja and Brett to sabotage the bulldozers while he created a distraction. But while Kevin was meeting the hotelier who wanted to take over the island, Leone Henningford, also known as the Dame of Pain, Katja and Brett were captured. Kevin now has to rescue them from Leone's floating fortress of a yacht. Kevin glared out at the biggest yacht he had ever laid eyes on. His excellent vision showed him there were armed guards keeping watch on every deck and through every porthole of the vessel. The yacht was like a floating fortress. He turned back to the member of Leone's entourage that he had been questioning. That place is the size of a hotel. Where are my friends being held?
I'm not sure,
the man whimpered. Kevin had barely touched him, but working for the notoriously bad-tempered hotelier had already made the man into a nervous wreck. He'd sobbed and stuttered through Kevin's entire interrogation.
But I heard something over the walkie-talkies about Leone ordering that they should die like rats.
Kevin pushed down his rage at Leone's casual attitude towards murder. He had to stay focused. I'm sorry, he said to the man, but I can't let you free to warn Leone. I'm going to have to knock you unconscious. The man actually smiled at Kevin.
Could you please?
Anxiety had given the poor man insomnia, and he hadn't been able to get a good night's sleep since Leone hired him. Kevin obliged the man with a swift, sharp blow to the chin. The man dropped to the ground, happily unconscious. Now Kevin had to figure out how to sneak onto the well-guarded yacht. The obvious answer was to approach it from underwater. where the guards wouldn't be able to see him. But even in his spectacular physical condition, it would take far too long for Kevin to swim out to the yacht. He worried that his friends didn't have that much time. He broke into an equipment shed and looked for anything that might come in handy. At best, he thought he might find an inflatable raft with an outboard motor he could use to at least get close. He couldn't find anything like that, but he found something even better. Out on the sea, Leone had Brett and Katja imprisoned in her super yacht's bilge. The water was already so deep that Katja and Brett were forced to tread frantically, fully dressed and with their hands cuffed behind them. They circled the space several times looking for footholds or a stray handle to grasp, but had found nothing. It was extremely difficult to keep their bearings in the pitch black, and the place stank from the filthy water.
"There's got to be some way out of here," Brett declared.
He was beginning to tire from keeping himself afloat without even the benefit of his arms. Katja was flexible enough to swing her bound hands under her butt and legs, so they were at least in front of her, but even that wasn't much of an improvement. Suddenly, the water in the bilge began to slosh up and down more than the slight movement of the huge yacht could account for. Suddenly, Katja heard Brett call out,
"Ow!"
"What is it?" she wanted to know.
"I think I just hit my head on something," Brett exclaimed.
"That's not possible," Katja contradicted. "The water was at least 5 feet from the ceiling when that hotelier hellion dropped us in here."
"Then that means the water level is rising," Brett said grimly. "It's rising fast, and that means
that we're running out of air," Katja finished. Kevin had found a heavy-duty construction cart meant to haul around heavy loads in small spaces. But in looks and general idea, it was exactly like a golf cart. Best of all, it ran on an electric battery. Kevin opened his trusty satchel of herbal remedies. When he found out he was coming to the island nation of the Maldives, he had mixed up several of his herbal concoctions that he thought he would likely need. He swallowed down an underwater breathing pill. Then he jumped in the cart and drove it out of the equipment shed. He reached the sandy beach and the edge of the water, and then he just kept going. The golf cart rocked as the waves hit it, but it was very powerful for its size and charged ahead. Soon the water was up to the wheel rims. Then it flooded into the cabin. Moments later, it reached Kevin's head, but with the underwater breathing pill, he paid it no mind. Soon, Kevin was driving along the bottom of the ocean. Heavy tides had smoothed the seafloor until it was almost as smooth as a road. He pushed the cart on to its top speed and soon was flying along at almost 50 miles an hour. His biggest problem was that visibility was low, even with the cart's headlights on high beams. It would be easy to miss the yacht entirely, and he didn't have time to go searching for it if he was to save Brett and Katja from drowning. But thanks to Kevin's excellent sense of direction and equally excellent vision, he was able to make out the yacht's massive anchor in the gloom. Kevin abandoned the trusty little golf cart and climbed up the anchor using his natural buoyancy to zoom up the length of the chain. He came out of the water exactly by the hull of the super yacht. The curve of the hull blocked him from the view of the guards on the upper decks. On board, the air hummed with tension. As the armed guards made their rounds, they were vigilant and ready. Leone knew all about Kevin's abilities and what he had accomplished in the epic clash. She had warned her guards to be on the highest alert and threatened them with dire consequences if they failed. Little did they know Kevin was even now crawling up the anchor's chain directly under their feet and creeping into the anchor locker. Kevin left the anchor locker and slipped through the bowels of the ship, looking for any signs of his friends. He heard 2 guards approaching from behind, and Kevin ducked around a corner to stay out of sight. He heard the guards pass by and thought he was safe until their footsteps slowed and then stopped.
"Wait,"
he heard one of the guards say.
"Did you see those wet footprints? Where did those come from? We should go back and investigate."
But Kevin was already upon them, cracking their heads sharply together. Although they didn't pass out, they were left dazed. Kevin seized their guns. He used the butt of one to render one guard fully unconscious and pointed the other gun at the remaining guard. "Where are my friends?" Kevin demanded. "I know Leone brought them aboard from the island and is holding them prisoner somewhere here." The guard put his hands in the air. "She had us throw them into the bilge," he confessed. How do I access the bilge? Kevin waved the weapon in a threatening manner. There's a hatch at the other end of the yacht, the guard replied, clearly terrified. What's the fastest way to get there? The super yacht was the size of one of Leone's luxury hotels, and Kevin could have wandered for hours looking for his friends. You can't go there directly from here. The engine room is in the way, the guard explained. You have to go up above on deck and then come back down on the bow staircase on the starboard side. But you're probably already too late. We've been taking on water because of the rising tide. I'm sure the bilge is full and they're surely already dead. You better hope they're not, Kevin retorted, sending the man into unconsciousness with the butt of the firearm. Rather than keep the bulky and noisy weapons, Kevin hid them in an equipment locker and took the first staircase he found up. He came out on the lowest deck that overlooked the water. A long line of guards stretched between him and where he could see the bow staircase far, far ahead. Faced with the daunting task of confronting the remaining armed guards, Kevin steeled himself for the inevitable confrontation. All of these guards were ordinaries, so Kevin couldn't use his leveled powers against them. Drawing upon years of training and experience, he assessed the situation with a calculating gaze. His adversaries were well-armed and well-trained, their weapons gleaming in the sunlight reflecting off the sea around them. Kevin drew his night dagger and launched himself into action. Moving with blinding speed and precision, he engaged the guards in a deadly dance of fists, feet, and blades. The narrow space afforded him the luxury of only having to deal with a few combatants at a time. The guards behind the ones he would engage couldn't open fire without risking hitting the members of their own team. Kevin ducked as the first guards opened fire at him, using a heavy pipe to block the bullets, which ricocheted in all directions. As soon as there was a break in the fire, Kevin ducked out, slamming the hilt of his night dagger into one guard's jaw, simultaneously delivering a punishing kick to the other's midsection. The guard tumbled over the railing into the sea below. Kevin picked up the remaining guard and shoved him at the next two. All three fell over the railing and into the water with a splash. Then the rest were upon him. Even as Kevin fought, he knew that time was not on his side. Reinforcements could arrive at any moment, and as the tide rose higher, his friend's time grew shorter. With each passing second, the odds stacked higher against him, threatening to overwhelm him with the sheer numbers and firepower. Trapped in the bilge, Katja's legs had grown to feel like lead weights. She kicked on with her head tipped back as far as it would go. She and Brett had less than 2 inches of clearance between the water and the top of the bilge compartment. She could tell that the air was growing thin, and it would soon be completely exhausted. She tried to think of something to say to Brett, some encouragement for them both. But before she could think of anything, the water rose again and filled the compartment completely. Katja and Brett were out of time. Katja and Brett were captured and imprisoned in a super yacht's flooding bilge on the orders of the Dame of Pain, hotelier Leone Henningford. Kevin now must fight his way through Leone's armed guards before it is too late to save his friends. Kevin stood on the lowest deck of the super yacht that overlooked the water. A long line of guards stretched between him and where he could see his destination, the bow staircase far ahead that led to the bilge compartment where Brett and Katja were imprisoned. With the rising tide, the bilge would be filling up with water. Even now, it might have been too late for Kevin to save his friends. But Kevin refused to yield to despair. He would not stop while even the smallest glimpse of hope remained. Already he had sent several of the armed guards over the railing and into the sea below. As the next wave of enemies took aim at him, he assessed the situation with a calculating gaze. They were heavily armed and heavily muscled, with both their guns and their biceps gleaming in the light of the sunny day. All of these guards were ordinary, so Kevin couldn't use his leveled power against them. However, he still had his martial arts training and his night dagger. The guards pressed forward and opened fire. Almost faster than the human eye could follow, Kevin leapt up, grabbed a beam from the deck above, and pulled himself clear of the hail of bullets. He launched himself forward, crashing into the foremost guard's feet first. They slammed back into their compatriots who had come running to reinforce their friends. Kevin ran over the bodies, leaping and landing with all his considerable strength, causing as much damage as he could to hands and heads, making sure the guards would not rise again, or if they did, they would be so maimed that they'd be unable to pull a trigger. Just as he planned, Kevin wound up in the middle of the group of guards. The narrow walkway skirting the side of the super yacht prevented the guards from surrounding Kevin. One of the fresh guards pointed at Kevin.
"Shoot him!"
"Don't!" screamed a guard on Kevin's other side. "You could just as easily miss and shoot us." It was true. They might have been able to catch Kevin in their crossfire, but not without staggering losses to their own.
"We still have him cornered,"
the first guard urged his friends on as they lowered their weapons. As one, both sides ran at Kevin. Kevin leapt for the side of the ship.
"Don't let him get away,"
the guard yelled. But Kevin had no intention of going overboard. That would mean abandoning Brett and Katja to their fate in the bilge, which Kevin would never do. Instead, he caught one of the deck's support beams and spun his body around it. Several guards fell overboard in their attempts to grab him. Kevin used centrifugal physics to increase the force of his return as he circled back onto the deck. His savage kicks took out 2 more guards. Regaining his feet, Kevin cut and slashed a path through his opponents with his night dagger. Even without channeling his leveled abilities through it, Kevin's dagger was a devastating weapon, slicing through body armor and flesh with equal ease. But just when he was almost to the stairs leading to the bilge, fresh reinforcements of guards arrived. Already battered by the grueling fight to get this far, Kevin refused to yield to despair. Reaching down into the depths of his inner strength, he pressed himself to the limit, channeling all of his extraordinary energy and focus into the battle. With a last grim surge of determination, he drove himself at the final guards, his fists, blade, and feet blurring fury as he unleashed a barrage of strikes that unerringly found their targets. At the same time, below deck, the black, filthy water of the bilge had risen to the top of the compartment, closing over Brett and Katja's heads and forcing them underwater. They flailed wildly. Both were seasoned fighters with high levels and stages, and thus both knew the expenditure of energy would only burn through the remaining oxygen in their blood that much faster. But pushed to this last extremity, it didn't matter. If they could not find a way out of the bilge, they would be drowned within minutes. Exactly how many minutes no longer mattered. Their fingers grazed the sides of the compartment, finding the riveted seam where metal met metal. They clawed at the joins, tore at them in desperation. But the tempered steel of the super yacht didn't yield to mere human flesh. They only succeeded in tearing their fingertips bloody. As the oxygen in their blood ran out, they both became lightheaded. The need to open their mouths, to inhale and let the black, filthy water of the bilge into their lungs became undeniable. Brett Stewart's and Katja Rafferty's time was almost at an end. Kevin reached his goal, the staircase that led to the bilge compartment where Brett and Katja were imprisoned. He slipped down it, pulling the hatch close behind him and locking it. He then broke the handle off entirely to prevent any of the recovering guards from following him. Kevin was now in the mechanical works of the great super yacht. He raced down the tight halls following posted signs and came to a sliding stop at a hatch in the floor. He tore it open, nearly wrenching it from its hinges in his hurry. In his interior thoughts, he prayed he wasn't too late, that there would still be space and air for his friends to breathe in. Kevin was too late. The bilge compartment was full to the top with black, filthy water. It even slopped up over the floor with the gentle movement of the boat at sea. But Kevin would never despair or give up while hope still lived. He plunged his arms into the inky depths, flailing wildly, hoping to latch onto his friends. Something flitted by the tips of his fingers. Kevin instantly seized onto it and yanked upwards. It was Katja's hair. Kevin plunged his other arm in and caught hold of Katja under the arms. He levered her up onto the bilge and into the life-giving air. For a moment she lay as still as death. But before Kevin could even attempt CPR, Katja convulsed and coughed, spewing filthy water from her lungs. She gasped and choked, but seemed out of immediate danger. "Brett," she gasped at Kevin. "Brett is still down there. Kevin, you must." Kevin was already moving. He dove headfirst into the dirty water without another thought. The only light came from the hatch above, and even that did not penetrate far into the stinking, clouded water of the bilge. Even Kevin's extraordinary vision, thanks to the frequent ingestion of the mental precision pills that he had refined, did not allow him to see beyond its light. He channeled all of his awareness into his sense of touch. He made a quick circuit of the bilge compartment but found no sign of Brett. Kevin realized his friend must have sunk to the bottom from the weight of his clothes and gear. Kevin dove down deeper, the water becoming thicker as he went. He scrambled through the debris at the bottom, desperate for anything that might lead him to his friend. At last, his fingers skated over a square of polished, slick metal. Kevin instantly recognized it as Brett's belt buckle. Kevin seized it and pushed off the floor of the bilge with a powerful thrust that sent them both back up toward the light of the open hatch. Katja was still too weak and depleted to do more than glance as Kevin heaved himself and Brett onto the floor of the upper compartment. Kevin immediately checked Brett's vital signs. There was no heartbeat or sign of breathing. Kevin turned Brett on his face and hitched his fists into the man's solar plexus to force out at least some of the brackish water, before trying to breathe life back into the leader of the Myriads, a man who was one of Kevin's true and loyal friends. Kevin started CPR, alternating chest compressions with artificial breathing, keeping up a steady rhythm, forcing oxygen into Brett's lungs, and then forcing Brett's blood to circulate it to his starved brain. Katja, still too weak to even stand, crawled closer. She grabbed Brett's hand and held it, adding her tremendous will to Kevin's that their partner should revive. The small motion seemed to exhaust her remaining strength, and she slumped back to the floor, although she continued to hold on to Brett. Kevin thought that Brett's color might be improving, although it could have been only his own wishful thinking. Still, he continued with CPR, so intent that he didn't notice the figure creeping up behind him. He only realized that they were no longer alone when the cold barrel of a pistol pressed against the base of his skull. "Put your hands in the air," Leone Henningford demanded, "or I will blow your brains out, Kevin Williams." Kevin fought his way through Leone's armed guards and rescued Katja, but Brett was unresponsive. Kevin began CPR on Brett, but was interrupted when Leone Henningford, armed and more dangerous than a rattlesnake, caught up with him. "Put your hands in the air," Leone Henningford demanded, "or I will blow your brains out, Kevin Williams." Leone held the pistol in one hand and pressed it to Kevin's skull. Her other hand clutched her signature walking stick, topped by an enormous diamond. The contrast of ostentatious wealth on one side and deadly force on the other was the perfect embodiment of Leone. She was capable of killing anyone who might prevent her from padding her life with more luxury. Kevin slowly raised his hands from Brett's unmoving body. He had no doubt that the ruthless hotelier would not hesitate to follow through on her threat if he resisted in the slightest. "I don't know why you suddenly decided to try to stop my plans for that island," Leone pronounced. "Maybe you thought you could build a pharmaceutical outpost here. Maybe you want to use it as a filming location for Williams Media. I know you like to remake classic movies because you're clearly out of your own ideas. A Mutiny on the Bounty movie on your mind, Kevin? Think this island would make for a great location shoot? Ha! Or maybe you're foolish enough to try to compete with me and thought you could use your own connections in Chicago and at the Salix Leaf Hotel to start to expand your empire on what is my turf." Leone, with her eyes filled with rage, could surely have gone on for many more minutes as she spewed accusations at Kevin had he not interrupted her. "I already told you," Kevin told her as he broke into her rant and used his most reasonable tone of voice. "It was just a coincidence. I was only trying to help the community members retrieve their things before your bulldozers knocked their shelters flat."
"I don't believe you!" screeched Leone.
Although she was holding him at gunpoint over the unmoving body of one of his friends, she still took a swing at him with her diamond-topped walking stick. Kevin easily ducked the blow without moving from his spot. The foiled attack on Kevin only enraged Leone more.
"Nobody gets in my way, and certainly not some snowflake bubble-wrapping brick scholar who—"
Suddenly, Brett rolled over and spewed up filthy bilge water all over Leone's Dior pumps. Leone howled in rage again and raised her walking stick to brain the man who still writhed on the floor, his body desperately trying to rid its lungs of the suffocating water that clogged them. But the walking stick was wrenched from her grasp by Katja, who had managed to get to her feet, although she wove back and forth more than the movement of the steady super yacht could account for. Katja had just enough strength to turn the stick on its owner, jabbing the diamond into her kneecap and sending Leone tumbling to the floor. Kevin dodged out of the way while deftly prying the gun from Leone's hand. She landed near the open hatch of the bilge, and it only took the slightest nudge from Kevin's foot to send her plopping into the filthy water. She instantly surfaced, hacking, coughing, and spitting in fury. Kevin shut the hatch on her, forcing her head under the smelly water. "Are we going to let her drown?" Katja asked half hopefully, leaning against the wall. Her strength had been exhausted again, although she kept a hold on the beautiful walking stick. Kevin raised his head at the sound of the approaching helicopters. "I don't think that will be necessary." He threw a lever on the bilge controls that would drain away some of the water, at least enough to give Leone a little breathing room. "And I think there are some people who would prefer to take her alive." Kevin administered recovery pills to Katja and Brett, which restored them almost completely to full strength, though both sensed their lungs would hurt for a while longer. When they finally went back on deck, Katja and Brett were astounded to find that the super yacht was surrounded by helicopters. Commandos were repelling from the copters and subduing the last of Leone's remaining security forces. On the super yacht's helipad, another helicopter had landed. Kevin, however, didn't look surprised in the least. He went to greet Agent Stanley Cooper of the Reaper Squad and Agent Karen Stone of Interpol as they left the helicopter. "Thanks for your call, Kevin," Agent Karen Stone said as she shook Kevin's hand. "We've been trying to locate Leone Henningford for months, but she keeps giving us the slip and using all of her hotels as safe houses." Brett eyed Kevin. "You called them in?" he asked in surprise. "You knew that Leone Henningford was a wanted woman?" Kevin shrugged modestly. "Since I've been traveling internationally more often lately, I try to keep up on Interpol's most wanted." "And we definitely wanted her," Agent Karen Stone added. "She's been indicted on 86 charges in 14 countries, mostly for tax evasion. But I suspect that once we finish interviewing her goons, we'll be able to add intimidation, strong-arm tactics, racketeering, blackmail, and a host of other charges." She rubbed her hands together in gleeful anticipation. "Leone can say goodbye to Gucci and hello to the House of Correction."
"Uncle Sam gets first dibs, though," Stanley Cooper confirmed. "We've seized all her assets, including this yacht. What we don't need for evidence will be sold so that victims can receive compensation."
Stanley Cooper looked around at the gaudy and impractical super yacht.
"Assuming we can find someone to buy this monster."
"I'll buy it," Kevin said mildly. "You, Kevin?" Agent Karen Stone gaped at him. "This place doesn't really seem your style." "I have plans for it. Very immediate plans," was all Kevin would say as he pulled his checkbook from his trusty satchel. The commandos made short work of rounding up the last of Leone's goons and packing them onto helicopters. Leone, filthy and sopping wet, was marched onto the last helicopter in Stanley Cooper's particular care. Katja reluctantly handed over her diamond-topped walking stick with a sigh when Stanley insisted it was evidence. "I could have commanded such discipline with it at the Williams School," she sighed. Katja was the headmistress of the school Kevin had founded in Washington, D.C. Brett gaped at Katja with shock.
You'd never really hit one of your students, would you?
Who said anything about the students? Katja retorted. I was thinking of the parents. Kevin's immediate plans for the super yacht became obvious as he expertly piloted the behemoth into the island's narrow bay. He knew the rising tide would endanger the little community that had been squatting on the island, especially since Majid still had not returned. Majid was the teenage boy who had been the reason Kevin had come to the Maldives in the first place. Brett had found a video of Majid glowing with the natural leveled energy that was the hallmark of potential candidates to become the next keeper of the White Tower of the Upper Realm. In his interior thoughts, Kevin believed Majid was the reason his little community had such luck finding islands that were less affected by the rising sea around them. Kevin intended to use the super yacht to collect the community members from the island and then go look for Majid. Once they found the boy, Kevin would be sure to make further arrangements to ensure the community would be safe even once Majid ascended to the upper realm. Of course, the yacht was far too big to come all the way to the humble dock. Kevin left Brett and Katja in charge while he took one of the yacht's smaller speedboats to the dock. Even this was plenty big enough to fit the community and all their belongings. The tide had come far up the beach by the time Kevin arrived. The community members were assembled there with their things held above the incoming waves. Kevin quickly loaded everyone onto the speedboat.
Took you long enough, grumbled the old woman who had become Kevin's main point of contact with the group. If you waited much longer, we all would have had to grow gills.
Kevin was just about to head back to the yacht when the old woman stopped him.
Wait! Look!
She pointed out to sea. Kevin saw a small sailboat running directly for the island on a swift current that seemed to exist nowhere else at the moment. At the rudder was a teenage boy.
That's Majid,
the old woman exclaimed. Although from where Kevin stood the wind was blowing in direct opposition, the boat's sails were full. The small craft seemed to practically fly over the water, another hint of an arena in which Majid's powers lay. But the same wind that helped Majid return to his community had also put him in danger. As Kevin watched, a huge silver blimp descended from darkening storm clouds above, keeping pace with the little sailboat. And dangling from a long rope was none other than Kevin's old enemy, Vincent Reeves. Kevin fought his way through Leone's armed guards and rescued Katja and Brett from imminent death in the waters of the yacht's overflowing bilge. Leone Henningford was arrested by Agent Stanley Cooper of the Reaper Squad and Agent Karen Stone of Interpol. Kevin purchased the super yacht and returned to the island, only to see Majid sailing back to his people, pursued by Vincent Reeves in a blimp. Kevin watched the great silver blimp dip lower from the gathering storm clouds. Vincent Reeves was suspended from a long rope trailing from the blimp's gondola. Vincent must have been somehow harnessed to the rope, because Kevin could see even from here that Vincent had replaced his usual hook prosthesis with a short trident on one arm and what looked like a crossbow on the other arm. In the small sailboat that was gliding across the waters thanks to the strong winds, the teenage boy Majid glanced back over his shoulder. He saw Vincent looking like something out of a nightmare pursuing him. The boy waved his arm and it glowed blue. Suddenly, a huge wave rose from the ocean as if by Majid's command and flung itself directly at Vincent. The wave of salt water hit Vincent directly in the face, but he just laughed unaffected by the dousing. Kevin could see Majid had aimed his little sailboat to intercept the island several hundred yards up the beach, from where he was currently skimming over the sea surface. Kevin was sure that Majid would be able to make landfall before Vincent could catch him. But once on land, Majid's progress would be significantly slowed. Then Vincent would catch up with him easily. Majid's people had all loaded themselves and their possessions onto the speedboat that Kevin had brought back from the super yacht that had formerly belonged to hotelier Leone Henningford, the Dame of Pain. Kevin turned the helm of the speedboat over to the old woman who was in charge of the little community. "Take everybody back to the super yacht. Kevin ordered her. "My friends will help you get your things aboard there."
"We can't leave without Majid," the old woman protested. "And that weird mechanical man is after him."
"Don't worry," Kevin assured her. "There's no way I'm letting Vincent get a hold of Majid." Without another word, Kevin grabbed something from a storage locker, leapt from the speedboat onto the watery dock, and began racing up the beach. Kevin suspected that Majid had been keeping the ocean tides at bay with his naturally leveled abilities to prevent this tiny island from being swamped. But between Majid's long absence and his current distraction, the ocean was doing its best to overtake and submerge the little isle. Waves crashed on the beach with furious power, running all the way up to the tree line and battering the palm trees and foliage there. Kevin ducked and dodged as he ran up the beach to intercept Majid. Several times he had to leap into the palm fronds to avoid a particularly powerful wave. His progress was significantly slowed. Majid reached landfall long before Kevin got to the end of the beach. The powerful current that Majid had manufactured through the little sailboat practically airborne as it met land. Majid leapt free of the craft right before the little boat was smashed to splinters against a headland of sharp rocks. He disappeared into the trees. Vincent slowed his approach, somehow controlling the blimp even while dangling from a rope beneath it. He circled over the area where Majid had disappeared, obviously searching for the boy. Every time Kevin had located another child of the Foundation who could be a potential next keeper of the White Tower of the Upper Realm, Vincent Reeves had also shown up in pursuit of the same child. Sometimes he tried to convince the powerful wielders of natural levels to join his side, but when that failed, Vincent resorted to trying to kill them. Sometimes Vincent even skipped the first part and just tried to kill them outright. So far, Kevin had located 3 of the 7 candidates to be the next keeper, saved them from Vincent, and gotten them safely to the Upper Realm. Kevin wasn't about to let the 4th candidate fall victim to Vincent's evil. Majid dodged through the trees, desperately looking for some place to hide from the strange mechanical man who had pursued him across the water in the silver blimp. As he approached the island where his community had been waiting for him, Majid had seen them gathered in the fancy speedboat, ready to go to the new home Majid had found. He was glad they were safe, but knew they could not help him against the maniac on his tail. Majid glanced up and saw that Vincent was almost directly above him, hanging from the blimp. He ducked lower, but Vincent circled closer. It was only in recent years that Majid had learned to call upon his leveled abilities. When he was younger, he suspected he had used them unconsciously, wishing for a sunny day when rain was in the forecast or conjuring up waves of exactly the right height to play in. But when ocean levels had begun to rise and storms threatened to subsume the little island his community called home, he realized he could affect the weather and tides on a conscious level. He reached deep and called everything he had into gathering a storm over the island. Wind, rain, and lightning were his best defenses against this threat from above. The clouds overhead darkened, the wind whipped up, and rain began to pelt down. But the powerful blimp managed to hold its position, and the strange man overhead just laughed and called down dire threats. Majid despaired. He knew he was stuck and that he would be found eventually. It was just a matter of time. Suddenly, a hand reached through the undergrowth and grabbed his arm. Majid jumped and turned to run, but the hand was like iron and refused to let go of him. Majid looked and saw an ordinary-looking man in simple dockers and keds had a hold of him. "Shh," the man whispered. "My name is Kevin Williams. I'm here to help you." Majid had seen this man, Kevin Williams, with his people in the speedboat, particularly with the old woman who was their unofficial leader. Majid instantly trusted Kevin. "Who is this maniac?" Majid demanded, motioning to Vincent, who still circled over their heads, searching for Majid. "Why has he been following me?" "It's a long story. I'll tell you everything," Kevin promised, "but not until I get rid of Vincent." "How are we going to do that?" wondered Majid. "He's been following me for miles. I tried everything I could think of and I couldn't shake him." Kevin eyed Majid, Although still a teenager, Majid was about the same size as Kevin, who was not a large man. They both had dark hair. In the storm, it might just be possible to convince Vincent to mistake Kevin for Majid. "Switch shirts with me," Kevin demanded. Majid's red shirt would be like a beacon in the gloom. They did. "I'll go this way," Kevin said, pointing toward the clearing where the community's huts had been. "You make your way to the far side of the island where the construction base is." Majid nodded to show he understood. "Once Vincent and I are gone, signal with this." Kevin pressed the object he had taken from the speedboat's locker into Majid's hand. It was a flare gun. "My friends in the super yacht will come around and pick you up. The rest of your people will be on the yacht too." "Got it," Majid agreed. He took a runner's pose, waiting for Kevin's signal to move. Kevin watched Vincent, waited for the perfect moment, then nodded to Majid. Majid took off, or rather, he tried to. His feet slipped out from under him on the rain-slick ground, and he went sprawling. The flare gun flew from his pocket, hit a rock, and discharged. Suddenly, the area was lit up with a bright white light.
"I see you," Vincent howled over the rain. "You think you were clever, but I see you."
Vincent aimed the crossbow directly at Majid and fired. But instead of a bolt, a heavy silver net flew from Vincent's prosthesis, a cord keeping it connected to Kevin's old enemy. The net landed squarely on Majid. He kicked and fought against it, but it closed around him. "Kevin, help me!" Majid yelled in terror as he was lifted into the air. Kevin ran for him, but Vincent was both reeling in Majid while at the same time having himself lifted back into the blimp. In a blink, Majid was out of Kevin's reach and rising through the sky. But although Vincent had disappeared into the blimp's gondola by now, the rope he had been hanging from still dangled from the blimp, high above the ground. In his interior thoughts, Kevin knew he couldn't let Vincent escape if he ever wanted to see Majid alive again. Kevin raced up the nearest palm tree, using hands and feet almost as if he were a monkey. At the top, he did not hesitate. He gathered all his leveled abilities and launched himself high into the air, arms outstretched, desperate to reach the rope trailing from the departing blimp. The rope grazed his fingers, but a rogue gust of wind whipped it away. And with that gust, Kevin's one chance to follow Vincent and to save Majid was gone. Kevin docked Leone Henningford's super yacht, which he bought near the Maldives community that needed rescuing from the rising sea waters. As he loaded the locals and their belongings, he saw Majid, the latest gatekeeper of the Upper Realm candidate, skittering across the landscape being pursued by Vincent Reeves. Kevin plotted with Majid to dupe Vincent, but Kevin's evil enemy soon whisked Majid into his blimp as Kevin attempted to pursue Vincent and to free Majid. Kevin hung suspended in the air for a heartbeat, the upward momentum of his terrific leap exactly balanced against the pull of gravity dragging him down. The wind of the storm that Majid had conjured with his leveled powers had whipped the trail rope of Vincent Reeves's blimp from his reach. But then an equally unlikely gust of wind blew the rope directly into Kevin's grasp. He seized hold of it with everything he had as the blimp rose higher and directly into the storm. Buffeted by wind and rain, Kevin climbed the rope hand over hand, hoping Vincent was too occupied with his new captive to bother to look back down. Fortunately for Kevin, Vincent was happily standing over Majid, who had been hauled in a net into the blimp's gondola by a motorized pulley. They were now in the gondola's bridge where all the airship's controls were. Majid kicked and fought against the net. He could thrust his hands through the gaps but could not tear it or throw it off. It had somehow fastened itself behind him and had Majid pinned to the metal wall of the gondola.
"Don't bother," Vincent laughed. "That net contains powerful electromagnetics around its rim. Once engaged, the magnetic bond is almost impossible to break. It will keep you in place until I decide exactly what to do with you."
"You're not going to do anything to him," a voice announced. Vincent spun to see Kevin climbing through the hatch. Vincent had replaced his usual hook prosthesis with a short trident on one arm and what looked like a crossbow on the other arm. In fact, the crossbow didn't shoot bolts. Instead, it had fired the electromagnetic net that had snagged Majid. Kevin didn't want to give Vincent a chance to use the crossbow net again. He wasted no more time on verbal sparring and ran directly at Vincent, pulling his night dagger as he ran right for his old enemy. Vincent's eyes widened. It was in a battle with Kevin and with that night dagger that Vincent had lost his first hand. The second hand had been lopped off by Kevin in another altercation. Vincent was determined not to lose any more limbs to his mortal enemy. Vincent got his trident up in time. Sparks flew as the two weapons met. Vincent gave his trident a twist, locking the night dagger between its prongs and trying to twist it from Kevin's grasp. Instead, Kevin followed the movement, keeping hold of the dagger and spinning his entire body up and over Vincent's arm. Vincent slashed at Kevin again. The trident gave him greater reach and Kevin was forced to back up, dangerously close to the open hatch. The blimp was continuing to rise, and the ground was now thousands of feet down in what could be a fatal fall. But the higher they went, the more the storm buffeted the blimp. At lower elevations, the powerful airship had been able to fight the crosswinds, but now it rocked and swayed with the force of the storm that Majid had conjured to help defend himself from Vincent. Kevin tried to dodge to the left and the right, but Vincent kept him at bay with the trident. One of Vincent's blows came so close it severed the strap of Kevin's trusty satchel and sent the bag of herbal ingredients and various supplies spinning across the bridge. Kevin paid it no mind. He was fighting for his life. Kevin looked for any advantage. He and Vincent both were level 7s. Vincent's abilities were unstable from his many trips through the doorway of the damned in the lower realm, but Kevin couldn't risk using his own. The blimp's position in the storm was too precarious, and using his levels now would mean risking bringing the airship crashing into the sea. Vincent lunged at Kevin, hoping to finally finish him off. To his delight, Kevin leapt backward to where nothing but the open hatch was. But then Kevin turned a double somersault midair and came down on the far side of the wide hatch, his toes a millimeter from the edge. But the new distance gave Vincent a different advantage. With space to maneuver, he brought his other prosthesis up, the crossbow that shot the electromagnetic nets. He fired. The net engulfed Kevin, the magnets engaging behind him. Vincent yanked on the cord that still connected him to the net, and Kevin flew forward and down, falling through the hatch only to come to a sharp stop 10 feet below the blimp's gondola. The cord connecting him to Vincent stopped Kevin from falling thousands of feet into the water below. Vincent laughed with triumph.
"I have you now, Kevin."
He gloated, calling down to his captured enemy. Kevin fought the netting, slashing at it with his powerful night dagger. Even his enhanced weapon had no impact on the net.
"It won't work," Vincent crowed. "That net is reinforced with adamantane fibers. Now I just have to decide if I want to drop you to your death or take my airship higher and watch you freeze in the upper atmosphere."
Vincent smiled, considering his options.
"You've been a wily opponent, Kevin. I think it's better I don't let you out of my sight while I kill you."
Vincent transferred the cord of Kevin's net to the motorized pulley. But all this time, Majid had been quietly mustering his strength. It had been severely taxed over the past few days between keeping high tides from swamping the island his community lived on and summoning the storm he had hoped would blow Vincent's blimp off course. But now that he was up here among the clouds, Majid sensed he wouldn't need as much leveled power to try to direct the fury of the winds and rains. He reached deep within himself and then out to the storm clouds around them. He felt the growing tension of the static electricity, all those air molecules bouncing off one another. Just a little more, and lightning flashed while thunder cracked. The blimp's lightning rod took a direct hit. Alarm sirens wailed on the bridge. Vincent raced to the controls to see the damage report.
Blast! The lightning rod has been blown clean off. It must be replaced immediately.
He smiled at Majid with an evil grin.
Don't go anywhere now,
he quipped before he left the bridge, heading toward the back of the gondola. As soon as he disappeared, Majid called down to Kevin. "Kevin, are you okay?" For the moment, Kevin called back through chattering teeth. Already the freezing temperatures were taking effect on his body. "Is my satchel still up there?" Majid glanced around and saw the satchel a few feet from him. "It's still here." "Throw it down to me," Kevin ordered. "What? You can't be serious," Majid exclaimed. "What if you don't catch it?" "Then I won't be in any worse position than I am now," Kevin explained philosophically. "But I think there's something in there that can get me out of this net. It's the only hope we have, so we might as well go for it. Hurry up before Vincent gets back." "And you better hurry before the storm gets any worse," Majid warned Kevin as he stretched his hand through the net, trying to reach Kevin's satchel. "I think I might have created a monster." Indeed, Majid's little nudge to set off the lightning had created a chain reaction amongst the storm clouds. Lightning now arched from cloud to cloud and thunder cracked almost continuously. Majid finally got his fingertips on the severed strap of Kevin's satchel. He drew it towards him and took careful aim at the hatch. "Here it comes," he warned Kevin, and then threw the satchel at the hatch, tossing it in a perfect arc so it would drop parallel to the cord by which Kevin was dangling. Kevin was ready when the satchel came flying out of the airship above. He grabbed it before it could tumble by him. Kevin struggled to open it through the clinging netting, but managed despite his shaking, freezing fingers. He quickly took stock of his supplies, considering any herbal ingredients that included disrupting chemicals that affected energy homeostasis. He remembered he had a rare form of soapwort that contained high amounts of phytoestrogens. This could be used to disrupt the electromagnetic connection holding him in the net. The soapwort needed to be crushed and added to water to release the phytoestrogens. Fortunately, the storm had not abated and Kevin was dripping wet. Although this contributed to his oncoming hypothermia, Kevin forced his shaking hands to be steady as he ground half his supply of soapwort between his hands. With the water, it foamed up in a rich lather which he applied to the electromagnets. They sizzled and popped. All at once, their magnetic bond broke and the net gaped open, releasing Kevin into the thin, freezing air. After a fierce battle, Kevin had Leone Henningford arrested and purchased her super yacht. Then Vincent Reeves, arriving in a silver blimp, captured Majid and then Kevin. Kevin was suspended under the blimp in an electromagnetic net. Kevin broke the net's electromagnetic bonds only to be suddenly dropped into thin air. Kevin felt the net open under him. There was nothing between him and the ocean waters below except thousands of feet of freezing air. But despite his growing hypothermia, Kevin's reflexes were still second to none. He grabbed onto the net with one hand before he could drop more than a few feet. With the other, he kept a tight hold on his trusty satchel of herbal ingredients. Kevin tied a knot in the severed strap of his satchel, looped it around his neck, and climbed hand over hand back up the cord into the blimp. Meanwhile, Majid was still pinned to the wall of the blimp's gondola by another electromagnetic net. He had heard nothing from Kevin since he had tossed Kevin's satchel out of the open hatch on the floor, praying that Kevin would be able to catch it before the satchel plummeted back to Earth. Majid was gratified to see the first one and then a second hand grip the edge of the hatch. They were blue and shaking with cold as Kevin pulled himself up into the safety of the gondola. "You did it," Majid exclaimed. "You actually escaped from that net. But that Vincent guy said there was no way out." "There's always a way if you can keep your head on straight, have belief, and not give up hope," Kevin assured Majid. "Now it's your turn to escape." Kevin repeated the same process to break the magnetic bonds that held Majid captive in another net. Kevin ground the rest of his supply of soapwort between his hands. It foamed up in a rich lather which he applied to the electromagnets. This rare kind of soapwort contained high amounts of phytoestrogens, a disrupting chemical that affected energy homeostasis. The electromagnetics sizzled and popped. All at once their magnetic bond broke, and the net gaped open. Majid threw it off easily. But just then, the storm that encircled the blimp increased in ferocity. The gondola shook and rocked as the wind tried to blow the gas-filled bag of the blimp in multiple directions all at once. "Can't you do something about this storm?" Kevin yelled at Majid over the howling of the wind. Majid closed his eyes and reached out with his powers. He had started the storm to try to evade capture by Vincent Reeves, but now the storm had progressed and taken on a life of its own. It was far too powerful for Majid to stop. "I can't do it," Majid cried. "It's too strong for me. Any second now it could tear this whole blimp to rags." "Then we better get off the blimp as soon as possible," Kevin decided. He opened the nearest storage locker and dug through it. He found what he was looking for, a parachute. "Stop!" yelled the voice, causing Kevin and Majid to look up. Vincent had returned from repairing the blimp's lightning rod. "That's my only parachute." "And once again, your selfishness has worked against you," Kevin declared, strapping on the parachute. He grabbed Majid, and before the teenager could protest, Kevin threw them both out the open hatch on the floor. Kevin and Majid fell through the thin, stormy air. The vast Indian Ocean below them grew larger by the moment. Kevin moved almost faster than the human eye could follow, buckling Majid into the parachute harness with him. As soon as Majid was secure, Kevin yanked the cord, opening the parachute. It blossomed above them, immediately slowing their descent. Although they were at a lower altitude, the storm's winds were still fierce. They caught the parachute and blew Kevin and Majid into a dizzying spiral that took them beyond the reign of the storm. They hit the water with terrific force, which activated the parachute's built-in life preserver. It inflated immediately, propelling Kevin and Majid back to the surface of the water. Although the water was rough, it was significantly warmer than the upper atmosphere, and Kevin felt his body regain its internal equilibrium, the hypothermia fading away to nothing. "Look!" Majid exclaimed, pointing upwards. Although now several miles from the storm, they could still clearly see the blimp as it was being tossed hither and yon by the raging tempest. At last, it disappeared into a thunderhead and was seen no more. "That takes care of that," Majid decided. "But what do we do now? We're adrift in the middle of the ocean. We have no idea where we are and no way to call for help." The bellowing ship's horn directed their attention to the horizon. Kevin grinned as he recognized the vessel. It was the super yacht he had bought from Agent Stanley Cooper of the Reaper Squad. Brett and Katja had obviously kept tabs on the blimp and had followed them, hoping for a chance to be of use. Several hours later, after being rescued by the super yacht, Majid was reunited with his community. Kevin changed into clean, dry clothes. He was finally warm the whole way through. It was now time for Kevin and Majid to have a talk. Kevin and Majid sat on deck chairs by the yacht's swimming pool. Kevin explained the upper realm to him. The upper realm was the alternative plane of consciousness that leveled experts were sometimes able to reach in order to refine their levels to the highest degrees. The upper realm was overseen by someone known as the Keeper of the White Tower. They were critical to the stability of the upper realm, but the current keeper, a woman named Elohi, was dying before her time. It was up to Kevin to locate children who were potentially the next keeper and bring them to the upper realm to be tested before Elohi died. "And that's me? I'm the next keeper?" Majid asked. "We're not sure," Kevin answered honestly. "We won't know for sure until I locate all the potential candidates, bring them to the upper realm, and you are all tested. If you are the keeper, it could mean you would never return to this plane of consciousness, so you must think carefully about it." Majid did consider it. "I don't know if they told you, Kevin, but I'm an orphan. I don't have any family here, but this community took me in. I feel like I owe them. Without me, any place they try to settle will eventually be overtaken by the rising ocean levels." "About that," said a voice. Kevin and Majid looked over to see the old woman from the community approaching them. "I've been talking to the others," the old woman continued.
And we decided that island living isn't for us anymore. Any place we go, someone else will come along and try to take it from us. That's why we're wondering if Kevin would be willing to allow us to stay on this super yacht indefinitely."
Kevin shrugged. "I have no other plans for the super yacht. I would be happy to leave it in your excellent hands and could even arrange a stipend for its maintenance."
"That won't be necessary," the old woman said. "We may be poor, but we have our pride. We would like to make our own way in the world. Most of us have experience working with tourists and in hotels. We were thinking that we could live in half the yacht and we would rent the other half out as a luxury hotel on the water."
Kevin smiled. "That's a brilliant business strategy. You would be able to continue to take advantage of the popularity of the Maldives as a luxury destination without using up valuable land for hotels or other accommodations."
"So you see, Majid, you don't need to stay with us if you don't want to," the old woman went on, speaking kindly to Majid. "You have more than paid back any minor kindness we did when we took you in as an orphan."
"You would also be safer in the upper realm," Kevin pointed out. "Vincent Reeves cannot get to the upper realm. He has been there before and he can only go once. He squandered what he learned there and turned it from good to evil. But as long as you stay on this plane of consciousness, he will try and come after you again." Majid's eyes went wide with alarm.
"I definitely don't want to meet that crazy maniac ever again. How soon can we leave for this upper realm place?"
Kevin smiled. "We can go right now. The upper realm isn't a physical place," Kevin explained. "It's actually a plane of consciousness. In order to enter the upper realm, we must achieve the correct mental state, one that resonates with the same frequency as that plane of existence itself." Although he had known sorrow, Majid had also experienced a great deal of wonder and happiness in his life. Kevin explained the process and watched as Majid laid back on the lounge chair. Surrounded by water, wind, and weather that he had loved all of his life, Majid smiled with a look of intense wonder and happiness. His eyes fluttered closed as if he'd suddenly gone to sleep, and then he disappeared. Kevin smiled, closed his own eyes, and focused on his own source of wonder and happiness, his darling wife Lily, and their soon-to-be-born twins. Kevin crashed down into a lily pond again. The lily pond was no more than 2 feet deep, covered with flat green leaves, and it was surrounded by a chorus of croaking frogs. Kevin looked around. Sure enough, he had arrived in the upper realm in exactly the same undignified manner as he had every time before. At this point, it was almost like being greeted by an old friend. With Elohi's time running out, Kevin continued to pursue candidates to potentially become the next gatekeeper of the upper realm. He has just rescued Majid, the teen in the Maldives who has the power of weather, to the upper realm while saving him from evil Vincent Reeves's clutches. But 3 more candidates must be found before the test of all 7 can proceed. Having some fresh information to share, Brett Stewart, the head of the Myriads and Kevin's longtime friend and ally in fighting back the Pinnacle's plans to attack the Foundation, arranged to meet with Kevin at a classic mom-and-pop coffee shop located off a quiet side street in the heart of downtown Chicago. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee permeated the air as Kevin entered the establishment. The familiar sound of clinking cups and hushed conversations provided a soothing backdrop for the meeting. Brett, already seated at a corner table, looked up as Kevin approached. "Kevin," Brett waved. "Over here. I ordered your regular, black coffee." The 2 friends settled into the worn wooden chairs, the ambient hum of the coffee shop cocooning them from the outside world. Kevin had barely had time to catch his breath after his, Brett's, and Katja's tangle with evil hotelier Leone Henningford in the Maldives, where she was buying up land to build luxury hotels, and where Kevin had to rescue Majid, and also help the locals to avoid being displaced by the rising waters. But he knew that Brett was as committed as Kevin was to their grail of getting all 7 candidates found and transported, so that Elohi's successor could be found before calamity might befall the upper realm through Elohi's death. Still, it was good to have a quiet moment with his friend and to enjoy the simple pleasure of a hot drink. "Coffee's good," Kevin noted as he took a long sip of the fresh brew. Brett nodded in agreement, then slid a manila file folder across the table, the worn edges bearing the weight of information that held the potential for the next chapter in their quest. "Our next candidate for Keeper of the Upper Realm," Brett offered. Intrigued, Kevin opened the folder to reveal a dossier on the next potential gatekeeper, a 9-year-old genius named Pembroke Rindollar. "Give me the bullet points. Who is this kid?" Kevin asked, knowing that his rest over a cup of coffee had already come to an end. His mission could not wait. "Give me the bullet points. Who is this kid?" Kevin asked, knowing that his rest over a cup of coffee had already come to an end. His mission could not wait. "Pembroke Rindollar is a chess prodigy," Brett began, his tone carrying a mix of excitement and anticipation. "At age 9, he is already a grand master of the game, and he is now vying to win the World Chess Championship against adults 3 times his age. Not bad for a 9-year-old, Kevin noted. "I didn't learn how to ride a bike till I was 10, Brett concurred, and he almost immediately regretted revealing such an embarrassing detail about his childhood to Kevin, whom he admired so greatly. Kevin skimmed through the details, his eyes catching glimpses of the prodigy's remarkable journey in the chess world. The file painted a picture of a young genius, destined for greatness, with an impressive list of achievements and accolades. "Where is he now?" Kevin asked. "He's getting ready to compete in the World Chess Championship, and it just so happens to be taking place in his hometown of Saratoga," Brett continued, leaning in as if sharing a well-guarded secret. "High-profile event, massive media coverage, and his parents, tech billionaires, have practically bankrolled the whole thing so it can be held close to home." "Tech billionaires for parents," Kevin repeated curiously. "What's their situation? How did they make their money?" "Dennis and Denise Pembroke," Brett responded. "They were early investors in the concept of video games." "The concept of video games?" Kevin probed. "That's right," Brett replied. "Before Atari, Nintendo, or Xbox, these two invested all of their savings into the idea of Atari, Nintendo, and Xbox. They were high school sweethearts, married 25 years. Quite the love story." As Kevin absorbed the information, the pieces of the puzzle began to align. The strategic mind of a chess grandmaster might hold the unique qualities necessary for the role of gatekeeper of the upper realm. "Well, then I guess the next move is to make contact," Kevin noted. "What's the play?" Brett probed. "Should we create fake personas and try to infiltrate the World Chess Championship as players? Or maybe we could pretend our parents were old high school classmates of Dennis and Denise and get access that way." "It's a fun idea," Kevin offered, "but these people seem grounded enough. Maybe I can just go there and talk to them face to face. Explain the situation." Brett shook his head agreeably. "Very direct. I like it." The next day, Kevin took a commercial flight to Silicon Valley. Saratoga, an affluent enclave in California, was the backdrop for this latest quest for Kevin, as he stepped onto the plush grounds of the Rindollar mansion. The luxury of the surroundings made it clear that Pembroke's parents were no strangers to the world of wealth and privilege. A massive outdoor chessboard could be seen in the yard leading up to the house, the pieces all sculpted out of lava rocks. Kevin approached the imposing entrance and gave a firm knock. A butler opened the door a moment later, sizing up Kevin with judgmental eyes. "Hello," Kevin offered. "My name is Kevin Williams. I was hoping to talk to Dennis and Denise Rindollar, or possibly their son Pembroke if he's available." "Charity inquiries are usually directed to the rear, sir," the butler remarked, assuming Kevin's presence to be that of someone seeking benevolence. "I'm not here to ask for charity," Kevin replied, his tone carrying the weight of his self-made fortune. "I'm actually a billionaire myself." The butler's raised eyebrows betrayed his disbelief. Of course you are, sir. But just so you know, we have a horse trough out back if you're looking to clean yourself up. The butler offered, subtly suggesting that Kevin might be more comfortable with the servants than in the Rindollar mansion. Kevin, undeterred, clarified his intentions. Like I said, I'm here to speak with Pembroke's mother and father. It's a matter of great importance. Are they available? The butler, now sensing that Kevin might be more than he initially appeared, hesitated but eventually conceded. Wait here, he instructed before disappearing into the grandiose foyer. Moments later, Pembroke's parents, adorned in the finest of attire, descended the grand staircase, their expressions a blend of curiosity and suspicion.
Well, look who it is, Kevin Williams, Dennis Rindollar noted. We've never met, but I was almost an early investor in Williams Media. Also, I bought a room in Quentin Covington's space station, until you blew it up. But no worries, insurance made us whole again.
Let's not bore our guest, Denise Rindollar cut in. Maybe ask him a few questions, darling, instead of just talking his ear off. I've come to speak with you about your son Pembroke, Kevin revealed.
I think Pembroke would love to meet the great Kevin Williams, Dennis replied.
I disagree, Denise countered. He needs to stay focused before the big tournament. I don't think he should have any visitors.
Chess is a game of strategy, Dennis pushed back. It's about knowing and understanding your opponent. Pembroke should interact with as many people as possible.
That's ridiculous, Denise countered, clearly agitated by her husband. Dennis and Denise Rindollar continued to fight. Like two titans engaged in a perpetual war, their battleground was the life and future of their exceptional son. Kevin, eager to navigate the tumultuous waters, attempted to establish a common ground. If it makes either of you feel any better, Kevin offered, maintaining a diplomatic tone, I'm on the brink of parenthood myself, expecting twins. I've heard about Pembroke's achievements and just wanted to learn from your experiences in raising such an extraordinary child. Maybe I could talk to you two both first and then talk to Pembroke. The appeal to their parental pride fell on deaf ears as the Rindollars seemed more interested in their ongoing domestic dispute. Denise, impeccably dressed and exuding an air of refined sophistication, squared off against Dennis, a man accustomed to wielding authority in the corporate world. He shouldn't be meeting anyone new right now. He's on the verge of the biggest competition of his life, Denise declared, her voice sharp as a well-honed blade. And we shouldn't be meeting with anyone either. Our focus should be on Pembroke and Pembroke only. Dennis, determined to assert his viewpoint, countered.
Meeting new people will broaden his horizons and give him a fresh perspective before the finals. It might just be what he needs, and I would love to engage with anyone besides you.
The couple's bickering intensified, reaching a crescendo that threatened to shatter the veneer of their high society composure. Amid the verbal onslaught, Kevin struggled to find an opening to connect with Pembroke. I understand that you both have Pembroke's best interests at heart, Kevin interjected, attempting to play mediator. But perhaps meeting someone like me who has succeeded in various endeavors could provide Pembroke with valuable insights for his future. His words fell on deaf ears as the Rindollars continued their heated exchange. In a moment of frustration, Denise hurled a chess trophy at Dennis, the metallic crash echoing through the grand halls of their mansion. Realizing that diplomacy was futile in the face of such domestic turmoil, Kevin pondered his next move. Dennis and Denise's marital battlefield escalated, with Dennis now threatening to use a hose on his wife.
I will spray you, Denise. Lord help me, I will spray you.
You don't have the guts to spray anyone, Denise shouted in reply. Seizing the opportunity, Kevin slipped away from the impending waterworks and ventured further into the mansion. Exploring the lavish interior, Kevin discovered a bizarre symmetry within the house. The dual sides mirrored each other with uncanny precision, a thick white line down the middle dividing the warring arena of Pembroke's parents, The decor, the furnishings, and even the lighting were perfectly mirrored, creating an otherworldly ambiance. As Kevin traversed the hallway, he came across two identical doors, adorned with portraits of the legendary chess grandmaster Bobby Fischer. Large signs on each door boldly declared, "Stay out." The duality of Pembroke's home mirrored the internal conflict of his parents, each side vying for dominance. Kevin wasn't sure which door to try first, but he hoped that behind one he would find the young chess prodigy and be able to convince him to journey to the upper realm. With Elohi's time running out, Kevin continued to pursue potential gatekeepers for the upper realm. The latest candidate was a young chess prodigy named Pembroke Rindollar, who lived in Silicon Valley. Kevin visited Pembroke's lavish mansion, but couldn't convince the young prodigy's parents, Dennis and Denise, to stop arguing. Kevin took the opportunity to sneak inside and spotted two matching doors on opposite sides of the same hall. Kevin debated, certain that Pembroke was waiting behind one of the doors. With the thick white line dividing the hall and the seemingly identical doors and rooms sitting across from each other, Kevin stood between the mirrored options, each adorned with images of Bobby Fischer. Intrigued, Kevin pressed his ear against one door, then the other, trying to see if he could hear Pembroke waiting inside. But the only sound that reached him was an eerie silence. Maybe he's not here, Kevin noted to himself, but maybe he is. Determined to locate the young chess prodigy, Kevin reached into his satchel and retrieved a mental precision pill. Determined to locate the young chess prodigy, Kevin reached into his satchel and retrieved a mental precision pill, a tool in Kevin's arsenal that heightened his senses and cognitive abilities. As he ingested the pill, a surge of clarity enveloped him. Suddenly, a faint voice like the whisper of a wise sage became discernible. The voice emanated from behind the door on the left side of the hall. The soft patter seemed to be offering advice on relationships. Kevin strained to catch every word. The sage voice imparted timeless wisdom, counseling an unseen someone to recognize their worth. "In every relationship," the voice offered, "there needs to be a mutual commitment. If only one person desires to stay in a relationship, then that relationship will ultimately fail. Relationships are wonderful, but they're also a lot of hard work. If both parties aren't ready to do that work, then the relationship is on a collision course with disaster. The desire to be together must be shared by both individuals for the union to flourish." Kevin, now attuned to the nuanced vibrations of the mansion thanks to his mental precision pill, absorbed the sage advice. He pondered the relevance of these words to the Rindollars, wondering if the wise voice might be someone speaking to Pembroke about his quarreling parents. The voice spoke of the importance of understanding one's worth and the significance of listening in a relationship. "At the beginning of every relationship, there's hope for what's to come," the voice continued. "But as time progresses and those hopes for the future go unfulfilled, both parties can turn bitter, and that doesn't help anything." Eager to unravel the mystery, Kevin continued to listen, trying to discern more about the source of this insightful counselor. The voice elaborated on the value of open communication and the necessity of creating special time every day to share with just your partner. Deciding to venture further, Kevin knocked quietly on the door. The voice abruptly fell silent, replaced by the innocent inquiry of a nervous 9-year-old. "Who is it?" "Kevin Williams," Kevin offered. "A friend." "Have we met before?" the nervous 9-year-old replied. "No," Kevin replied. "But I just met your parents and I asked them if we could meet." "And what did they say?" the 9-year-old probed. "Honestly," Kevin confessed, "they were too busy fighting with each other to give me an answer either way." "I hate when they fight," the 9-year-old confided. "I didn't mean to aggravate them," Kevin noted. "That must be hard on you. My mother-in-law is always fighting with me and I don't like it one bit. Home should be a safe place, and parents should be a calming force for their children." "They're not," the voice replied. "They are always arguing." "I'm sorry," Kevin offered. "That sounds hard, and I don't want to make your life any harder. If you want me to leave, I will." With a creak, the door opened slightly, revealing a glimpse of frizzy-haired, bespectacled Pembroke. "No, you can stay." Pembroke ushered Kevin into his room. The space was adorned with an eclectic collection of pictures featuring Dr. Ruth, Dr. Phil, Oprah, and Freud. It was clear that Pembroke sought guidance and wisdom from these relationship gurus. Kevin, taking in the peculiar decor, realized that Pembroke's room was his sanctuary, a haven amidst the storm of his parents' relentless disputes. As Kevin looked around, he suddenly realized that he and Pembroke were alone. "Wait," Kevin asked. "Who was the older man I heard talking earlier? It sounded like he was giving relationship advice." "It was me," Pembroke admitted. "I have a relationship podcast, but I have to use a voice alternator because my parents would be furious if they knew I was wasting my time talking to people about their lives." Inside Pembroke's room, surrounded by images of renowned relationship experts, Kevin engaged in conversation with the young chess prodigy. Expecting to discuss the intricacies of chess strategy, Kevin was surprised when Pembroke revealed that his parents had imposed the world of chess upon him. It wasn't a personal passion. "So you don't even like to play chess?" Kevin asked. "I'm good at it," Pembroke replied. "And it feels good to be good at any activity, but I've worked hard to become this good, and practice takes up so much of my time. And that's infuriating because chess isn't my true calling." "Well, then what is?" Kevin asked, genuinely curious. Pembroke, eager to share, opened up about his true passions: psychotherapy and couples counseling. The young prodigy had developed a keen interest in the dynamics of human relationships, seeking solace in the wisdom of figures like Dr. Ruth, Dr. Phil, and Freud. "People are fascinating," Pembroke noted. "Every human being is a complex organism processing a million different stimuli every moment. That's interesting in and of itself, but when you combine two of these organisms, truly spectacular results are possible." As they delved into a discussion about the complexities of relationships, Kevin found himself impressed by Pembroke's depth of understanding. The 9-year-old's insights went far beyond his years, and it became apparent that chess was just a facade. Pembroke's true calling lay in deciphering the mysteries of the human heart. "You don't meet many 9-year-olds who are curious about relationships," Kevin noted. "Most boys your age think girls have cooties and just want to play in the dirt." "I guess I'm just different," Pembroke replied. "Tea?" Pembroke gestured toward a small desk adorned with a tea set, inviting Kevin to take a seat. As they settled in, Pembroke, the young connoisseur of relationships, prepared a pot of tea with meticulous care. The room filled with a soothing aroma as the tea leaves unfurled in the hot water. Handing a cup to Kevin, Pembroke observed the glint of something on Kevin's finger. Intrigued, he asked, "I see you have a wedding ring. Are you married?" Kevin, sipping the tea appreciatively, replied with a warm smile, "Yes, happily married." Pembroke's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Tell me about her. What's she like?" "Well," Kevin offered with a genuine warmth, "she's a wonderful woman, a terrific wife, and she's 8 months pregnant with our twins, and she's the mayor of Chicago." At the same time that Kevin was telling Pembroke about his beloved Lily and her political career, the corridors of City Hall echoed with the hushed conversations of bureaucrats and the occasional distant sound of ringing phones. Lily and Rachel, with furrowed brows, navigated the long hallways that led toward the meeting room where the forensic accountants awaited them. "Why would the accountants need to talk to us again?" Rachel wondered. "Hopefully it's because they found something," Lily replied. $80 million earmarked for the Widows and Orphans Fund had gone missing, and Lily was blamed for the disappearance. She wanted answers, and she wanted them fast. Upon entering the room, the atmosphere was sterile, lit by the cold fluorescent glow. Lily and Rachel took their seats, flanked by numbers-crunching accountants engrossed in their investigative work. An air of anticipation hung heavy in the room.
Mayor Williams, thank you for coming, one of the accountants acknowledged, signaling them to sit.
My pleasure, Lily replied. What do you have for us? As the presentation unfolded, the forensic accountants methodically detailed their findings. Lily's mind raced as they traced the path of the missing $80 million. The tension in the room mounted, each revelation adding to the weight on Lily's shoulders.
So we know where the $80 million was deposited, at least most of it. But now we have the final piece. We know where the rest of the money went and who most likely sent it there, the accountants noted.
Rachel, her features a mask of professional composure, scribbled notes as the accountants meticulously connected the financial dots. The evidence pointed to a malevolent force at play, a betrayal that threatened not only Lily's reputation but the very fabric of trust in her administration. The room's somber air heightened the gravity of the situation. Lily's apprehension deepened with each passing moment, unsure of the impending revelation that lurked beneath the layers of financial intricacies. As the accountants approached the culmination of their presentation, a palpable silence settled in the room. The air crackled with anticipation, and then, with a deliberate pause, the lead accountant dropped the bombshell that sent shockwaves through Lily's world.
And Mayor Williams, it appears that these funds were being systematically redirected by Ruby Kincaid.
Lily's mouth dropped. Ruby? The revelation hung in the air, a chilling disclosure that shattered the trust Lily had placed in a supposed ally. The depth of the betrayal, hidden until this moment, exposed a sinister underbelly of corruption that threatened to engulf them all. The room, once filled with the mechanical hum of fluorescent lights, now echoed with the weight of deception and the uncertainty of the path ahead. Lily had a traitor on her own staff. As Kevin met with young chess prodigy Pembroke Rindollar in Saratoga, Lily was busy meeting with her forensic accountants who informed her that the missing $80 million, stolen from the Widows and Orphans Fund, had been taken by none other than a member of Lily's own staff, Ruby Kincaid. Lily sat across from Rachel in the accountant's office, her mouth agape. The revelation hung in the air like an ominous cloud, casting shadows across Lily's world. The words redirected by assistant to the mayor, Ruby Kincaid, echoed in Lily's mind. Lily's shock was palpable, her gaze fixed on the accountant who had unraveled the web of deceit a moment earlier. Ruby Kincaid, Lily repeated. Are you sure?
100%, the lead accountant replied. The transfers can be tracked down to her personal computer. In addition, 10% of the $80 million was forwarded into Ruby's personal checking account. She hid her work well, but the digital fingerprints were still there.
Lily shook her head in disbelief. I just can't believe it. Rachel's reaction was markedly different. There was no surprise in her eyes, only a knowing glint that betrayed an awareness Lily had failed to acknowledge. It was a moment of realization, not for Rachel, but for Lily herself. Lily, Rachel said, her voice steady, I've been trying to tell you for a while that not everyone in your inner circle is as genuine as they seem. Lily turned to Rachel, her eyes reflecting a blend of disbelief and hurt. The revelation about Ruby, a friend turned adversary, had torn a hole in the carefully constructed tapestry of loyalty Lily had woven. Why, Rachel? Why would Ruby do this? Lily asked, her voice tinged with a mix of sorrow and confusion. Lily had yet to get over the shock that came when she learned that Nancy, her supposed pregnancy pal, was actually in cahoots with Juanita Hernandez and plotting with her to rip Lily's twin babies out of her womb. Now one of her most trusted allies in her duties as mayor was scheming against her as well. Power, Lily. It's always about power and money, Rachel replied, her tone grave. Ruby saw an opportunity and she took it. She exploited your trust, and now we have to deal with the fallout. The harsh reality pressed down on Lily, the innocence of her mayoral tenure shattered by the revelation of betrayal. As Lily grappled with the searing sting of deception, she felt a profound shift within herself. The mayoral facade cracked, revealing vulnerability beneath the surface. Lily's mind was a turbulent sea of emotions, each wave crashing against the walls of trust she had built with those around her. Rachel, always the pragmatic voice, had more truths to unravel. "Lily," Rachel began, her voice measured, "Nancy's involvement with Juanita Hernandez was just the tip of the iceberg. We're dealing with a complex web of deceit, and Juanita might be very well at the center of all of it." Lily shook her head. "But Nancy is dead. Juanita defeated." Lily said the words both with regret and with the hope that they were true. She couldn't face having Juanita rise against her again and threaten both her life and the lives of her twins, all while trying to get misdirected revenge on Kevin. "That doesn't mean this wasn't a plan put in motion long ago," Rachel countered. "Juanita might be gone now, but Ruby is still out there." Lily's eyes widened, the weight of the situation sinking in. The tendrils of deception extended further than she could have imagined, entangling those she thought were allies in a sinister plot. "Nancy, Juanita, Ruby. It seems like I've been surrounded by people with hidden agendas this whole time." Lily muttered, her disbelief evident. Rachel nodded, acknowledging the gravity of the situation. She put her hand on Lily's. "I don't have any hidden agendas. I just want to help." Lily smiled in thanks. "So how do we handle this?" Rachel asked. "It's time we stop theorizing about what might have happened," Lily offered. "Let's get our answers directly from the source." City Hall buzzed with the usual activity, the hum of bureaucracy resonating through the corridors. Lily and Rachel walked purposefully toward Ruby Kincaid's office. As they approached Ruby's door, Lily couldn't shake the lingering shock from the revelations about the missing funds. It was a betrayal that cut deep, and she steeled herself for what lay ahead. Rachel, ever the strategist, reminded Lily to stay composed. "We need to approach this calmly and methodically, Lily. Ruby may not be alone, and she's likely prepared for just the moment that this revelation would come." Lily nodded, her jaw set with determination. The office door swung open, and there sat Ruby Kincaid, seemingly unfazed by their entrance. "Lily, Rachel, to what do I owe the pleasure?" Ruby greeted with a false smile, her eyes betraying a hint of mischief. "We're not here for pleasantries, Ruby," Lily retorted, her tone sharp. "We've discovered the trail of the missing funds leading to sports organizations in Wisconsin and Minnesota. Funds that were transferred from your personal computer. Care to explain?" Ruby leaned back in her chair, a calculated nonchalance in her demeanor. "Ah, the mysterious funds. I'm as surprised as you are, Mayor. Are you saying my computer was used? That's crazy. How could such a thing happen under our watch?" Lily's patience waned. "Cut the act, Ruby. The money traces back to you, and we know about the 10% you skimmed to deposit right into your personal accounts. What's your game?" Ruby's facade faltered for a moment, a fleeting hint of panic in her eyes. Recovering quickly, she shrugged. "Wait, Lily, do you really think I did this? I'm being framed. Anyone could manipulate transaction these days." Rachel stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "Save the theatrics. We know you're involved, Ruby. The question is, how deep does this betrayal go? Juanita Hernandez isn't around to protect you anymore." Ruby chuckled, a concerning sound that echoed through the office. "You two always had such faith in people, Lily. Trust me, it's a weakness, and weakness can be exploited." Ruby stood and stepped over to a side door in her office. She opened it, revealing a side room where a dozen burly mob goons sat waiting. "My office needs a good cleaning," Ruby directed the goons. "Kill them! Kill them both!" The menacing figures descended upon Lily and Rachel. With lightning speed and grace that belied her condition as an 8-month pregnant mother-to-be, Lily unleashed a barrage of kicks and punches that left the goons reeling. The office became a chaotic battleground as Lily defended herself against the orchestrated attack. Rachel, not one to be sidelined, seized the opportunity to assert her own agency. In a quick and tactical move, she skillfully tripped one of the advancing goons, sending him sprawling to the floor. It was a momentary victory that disrupted Ruby's carefully laid plans. The room echoed with the sounds of the struggle, the clatter of overturned furniture and the occasional yelp from the thwarted goons. Lily, fueled by a mix of maternal instinct and a determination to protect her city, fought with a ferocity that surprised even herself. Lily's despair and confusion that came from the news of Ruby's treachery was brief. Mayor Lily Williams was completely in control of the situation. Meanwhile, in Saratoga, Kevin continued to talk with young chess prodigy Pembroke Rindollar about his relationship with Lily. "She's so gentle and caring," Kevin noted. "She'll be a wonderful mother, but I do worry she won't be able to administer discipline when the twins need it. Her heart is so big, it's hard for her to not be kind at all times." As Kevin painted a picture of Lily's gentle nature, Lily continued to battle mob goons inside Ruby's office deep in Chicago's City Hall. Amid the chaos, Lily's eyes locked onto Ruby's, a silent vow that justice would prevail. The battle spilled into the hollowed halls of City Hall, echoing with the clashing of ideals and the confrontation of long-buried truths. Lily, heavily pregnant with twins, beat the mob goons to a bloody pulp. Kevin's babies had fueled her in a way she had never experienced before. Lily wasn't a leveled fighter, but she felt like one at that moment. As the crowd gathered, the tension in the air was palpable. Lily, having gained the upper hand in the struggle, now stood face to face with Ruby, the orchestrator of deceit. Their heated exchange of accusations echoed through the marble corridors, exposing the tangled web of embezzlement. With a swift and determined move, Lily seized Ruby and dragged her to a high-floor balcony. The gasps of onlookers below intensified as Lily dangled Ruby over the edge, a desperate attempt to extract the truth from the deceitful staffer. "Where did the money go, Ruby?" Lily's voice carried with an authoritative force. "Say it! I know you know!" Ruby, caught in a precarious position, finally screamed out the facts about the stolen funds. The crowd gasped, not at the revelation of embezzlement, but at the unexpected recipients, the Minnesota Twins and the Green Bay Packers. Shock rippled through the onlookers as the truth unfolded. Lily, standing at the precipice, had Ruby reveal the extent of her crimes. The words hung in the air, a damning testament to the betrayal that had unfolded within the heart of the city's government. The crowd below murmured in disbelief. In a moment that would define Lily's fight for justice, she released her grip on Ruby's hand. Ruby's terrified scream pierced the air as she plummeted to the ground. A collective gasp from the crowd was followed by a sickening thud as Ruby collided with an awning and then slid onto the sidewalk. Officer Kelly Emmett, an unusual beacon of justice in the chaos considering her past kidnapping of Lily and battles with Kevin, moved swiftly to handcuff the fallen Ruby. "You're going to jail for crimes against the Sox and the Bears," Officer Emmett declared, ensuring that justice would be served not only for the embezzlement, but for the betrayal of the city's sports legacy. Lily, standing on the balcony, had reclaimed her reputation, and the halls of City Hall were left to reckon with the aftermath of the battle that had unfolded within its walls. In search of the next candidate for gatekeeper of the upper realm, Kevin traveled to Silicon Valley to meet with a 9-year-old chess prodigy named Pembroke Rindollar. When Kevin arrived at the young boy's home, he discovered that Pembroke's parents, Dennis and Denise, were constantly fighting with each other, and at odds about everything, including Pembroke's future. Kevin snuck away from the parents to meet with Pembroke one-on-one and discovered that the young man had a penchant for relationship advice and was a natural matchmaker. Kevin sat across from Pembroke inside the young man's bedroom, where pictures of Dr. Ruth and Freud hung on the walls. Pembroke had spotted Kevin's wedding ring and was curious about his relationship. Kevin raved about Lily and was open about how excited he was to become a father. "She's going to make a great mother," Kevin concluded, "and she's already a great mayor."
She sounds wonderful, Pembroke noted. And the way you speak about her makes me think your relationship is truly strong. That's good. That's very good. Most people feel lost in their long-term relationships. It's a real problem.
I'm very lucky, Kevin replied.
So what do you want from me? Pembroke wondered aloud. Do you want me to tutor you in chess? Most people want me to tutor them in chess. People ask me a lot about chess. It's always chess. Chess, chess, chess.
Not exactly, Kevin replied, peering at the chess prodigy with a glint of mystery in his eyes. Tell me, Pembroke, have you ever heard of the upper realm? Pembroke shook his head, a furrow forming on his young forehead.
Upper realm? Is that a new kind of chess move?
Kevin leaned forward, his voice hushed as if sharing a secret with a fellow conspirator. It's a place beyond our world, a haven for the highly skilled, where they go to become true masters of their craft. A sanctuary of knowledge, skill, and potential. The young prodigy's eyes widened with intrigue. Kevin continued narrating tales of Elohi, the current gatekeeper of the upper realm. Kevin related that Elohi, elderly and ailing, needed a successor to carry the mantle and to protect the realm from those who sought to exploit its power. Pembroke, my young friend, I'm on a quest to find the one person who can safeguard the upper realm, and I think you might be a perfect candidate. Kevin explained, his words carrying a weight of both responsibility and possibility. Pembroke, absorbing the significance of the tale, contemplated the idea of being the next gatekeeper. A chess prodigy who had mastered the intricacies of a game now faced a greater challenge, becoming the guardian of a realm beyond imagination. I've been scouting candidates, individuals with exceptional skills and potential, people who can embrace the responsibility and protect the upper realm. In the end, only one will be chosen. And if you're open to it, that one could possibly be you. Kevin continued, emphasizing the gravity of the mission. Pembroke sat immersed in thought, the chessboard of his mind calculating the moves in this unexpected game of destiny. The possibility of being a gatekeeper, a protector of the upper realm, opened a portal to a vast array of purpose and significance beyond the 64 squares he was accustomed to.
All right, Pembroke finally responded. I'll go, but I can't leave until after the World Chess Championship.
I understand, Kevin replied. You have a chance to do something really special, to become the highest-ranked chess player the world has ever known. I wouldn't want to take that from you.
I don't care about chess, Pembroke confessed. But there are 2 players who have been calling into my relationship podcast pretty frequently. I think they'd make a perfect match. I want to try to get them together, and the championship is my best shot to make that happen. Will you help me?
Pembroke's revelation about the real reason behind his reluctance to leave before the chess tournament surprised Kevin. As they sat in the peculiar room adorned with images of therapists and psychologists, a new layer of Pembroke's character unfolded. Wait, so you're delaying a potential journey to fulfill your own destiny and to become a gatekeeper for a love connection? Kevin asked, his eyebrows arching in curiosity. Pembroke nodded, his glasses slipping down his nose as he leaned forward.
Yeah, it might sound silly, but I've been watching them. They're both too shy to admit their feelings, and I thought if I could just nudge them in the right direction before I go, it'd be a nice way to leave things here.
Kevin couldn't help but chuckle at the unexpected twist in Pembroke's priorities. Love, huh? Well, that's certainly a unique reason to delay saving the world. Pembroke grinned, the weight of his potential gatekeeper role momentarily replaced by the joy of orchestrating a romantic connection.
Will you help me?
Kevin, appreciating the young prodigy's perspective, nodded agreeably. Love is a powerful force. If you believe it's worth a slight delay, then who am I to argue? Of course I'll help. Even as things seemed to be going well, a lingering concern gnawed at the edges of Kevin's mind. Vincent Reeves. The formidable adversary had a knack for emerging from the shadows to strike at any potential candidate for gatekeeper of the upper realm. Kevin knew better than anyone that Vincent Reeves was no ordinary foe. Their last encounter over the stormy Maldivian waters had left Vincent at a disadvantage, hurtling his blimp into the tempestuous unknown. However, experience had taught Kevin that counting out a resilient adversary was a risky game. Vincent Reeves was still out there, and he was going to strike. The only questions that remained were when and how. As Kevin prepared to help young Pembroke in Silicon Valley, Lily was back in Chicago enjoying a moment of triumph. With Ruby Kincaid arrested and the money she had stolen returned, Lily was able to sit back to enjoy the victory. The city of Chicago, once critical of Lily when the embezzled funds were suspiciously linked to her, now rallied behind their butt-kicking new mayor. The recovered $80 million was tossed back with disdain by the Packers and Twins once they realized where the surprise funds had come from. They didn't want that dirty Chicago Bears and Sox money. The Widows and Orphans Fund had been fully replenished, and Lily made sure that every widow and orphan got a special bonus gift for being put through so much strife. As the dust settled and Ruby Kincaid was driven off in handcuffs, Lily turned to Rachel, her campaign manager and friend. "What a day," Lily sighed, not with exhaustion but with satisfaction at what she and her best friend had accomplished. Rachel smiled in agreement. "I didn't know you could fight like that." "I could say the same about you, Rachel," Lily joked. "If I'm being honest, I felt so much more assertive since getting pregnant with Kevin's babies. It almost feels like a little bit of him is flowing through me." "Amazing," Rachel noted. "Most women are practically immobile at 8 months pregnant, especially if they're carrying twins. But you seem stronger than ever." Lily couldn't help but grin. "I hope it lasts." Returning home to the mayor's mansion, Lily relished the quiet of her residence, a haven from the storm that had engulfed her life since the recent money scandal. The house was empty. Dorothy had left earlier in the week to meet up with her husband Oliver, a globetrotting businessman who was almost never in one place for more than a few hours, and who was now on a rare prolonged business trip to Waikiki. And Kevin's parents, Alan and Susan, were off to see U2 in concert. Lily assumed she had the mansion to herself, but as she parked the car and headed for the front door, Lily was startled by an unexpected visitor she found waiting for her there. Sonny, the seemingly friendly dog walker for Hank the dog, waved at Lily as she approached. "Mayor Williams," Sonny exclaimed. "So good to see you. I was just bringing Hank back from a scheduled walk." Hank waited on his leash by the door as Lily approached. "Don't call me Mayor Williams," Lily pushed back playfully. "You take care of Hank. You are practically family. Call me Lily." "All right, Lily." Sonny smiled as he held open the door for the mayor. Hank ran inside. Lily followed the pup. But as Lily entered the mansion, Sonny slammed closed the door behind her. He locked the bolts. "Sonny?" Lily inquired curiously, caught off guard by his abrupt action. Sonny had maintained a positive attitude, but once the door was closed and locked, the atmosphere shifted abruptly. Sonny pulled out a hypodermic needle, a weapon against which Lily had no defense. Lily's eyes went wide at Sonny. "Sonny, what are you doing?" In a sudden move, Sonny plunged the needle into Lily's neck. The venomous substance coursed through Lily's veins, causing her to reel and then collapse onto the cold floor. The very place that was meant to be her refuge had become a stage for treachery. "Sonny," Lily whispered in surprise. "What are you doing?" "You'll see," Sonny replied simply, his stare deadly cold. As Lily felt her consciousness slipping away, the true motives behind Sonny's actions remained shrouded in mystery. The tranquility of the night was shattered by the unexpected assault, leaving Lily at the mercy of the evil plot. What sinister plans had been set into motion, and who lurked in the shadows orchestrating this betrayal? As Lily succumbed to the effects of the injected substance, the answers remained elusive, leaving the fate of the mayor's mansion hanging in the balance. While Kevin met with Pembroke Rhinedollar, a young chess prodigy and a potential candidate for Keeper of the Upper Realm, Lily was back at home in Chicago, enjoying her downtime alone in the mayor's mansion. But Lily's time off was disrupted when she was unexpectedly drugged by her dog walker Sonny and fell unconscious. Lily awoke to an unfamiliar setting, disoriented and confined within the walls of a large pet supply storage room, deep inside the mayor's mansion. Dog food bags were stacked alongside leashes, grooming materials, and a designated doggy bathing area. Tall cat scratchers indicated that it served as a haven for both canine and feline companions. As Lily attempted to rise, she realized she was trapped inside a kennel, her dog Hank's kennel to be precise. "What?" Lily whispered to herself, still groggy from her recent drugging. Questions swirled in her mind. How had she ended up here? What nefarious plot had unfolded within her own residence? The answers remained elusive, teasing her as she struggled to make sense of the peculiar situation. As her mind began to clear further, Lily scanned the rest of the room. The room was dark, the only light coming from a large flat-screen TV resting on the floor in front of the kennel. A dusty VCR was hooked up to the TV, playing old home movies that revealed scenes of two young boys joyfully playing together in a grass-filled backyard. Lily furrowed her brow. These weren't memories from her own family. Confusion and concern etched across her face as she grappled with the mystery unfolding before her. Who were these boys? Why were these videos playing in front of her? Lily tried to open the kennel. It was locked. She pulled on the metal door. It wouldn't budge. Desperate and confused, Lily called out, "Hello? Can anyone hear me? Is anyone out there?" Sonny, the dog walker, stepped out from the shadows, his presence casting an eerie silhouette against the backdrop of the dimly lit space. Lily suddenly remembered where she had been just before she woke up in the pet supply room. She had returned home to find Sonny finishing a walk with Hank, but then suddenly he had pulled a needle and stuck it into her neck. "Sonny?" Lily noted. "What is this? What's happening?"
"Justice," Sonny replied coldly. "What's happening here is justice."
"I don't understand," Lily replied. "Are you unhappy with what we've been paying you for the dog walks? You could have just talked to us. Kevin has plenty of money."
"This isn't about your stupid dog," Sonny shouted angrily. Hank could suddenly be heard barking in the distance. Her dog was somewhere else inside the mansion, too far away to help her, and most likely tied up as part of Sonny's plan. Lily had hoped that someone might hear her or Hank barking and come to investigate. But the mansion was empty. Everyone was gone for the weekend. Lily had been happy to think that she was going to have a weekend of peace and solitude, but now she realized that the fact that she was alone probably played right into Sonny's evil scheme.
"If it's not about the walks, then what?" Lily asked, trying to remain calm and reasonable.
"I know I came to you as a stranger," Sonny explained, "but the truth is you know my brother. You knew my brother."
"Your brother?" Lily repeated. "Who?"
Sonny turned to the TV still playing family videos of two young boys playing catch in the yard. "His name was Sid," Sonny noted simply. "Sid Mangolia. He was a good man, and you killed him." As Sonny revealed his true identity as Sid's brother, the air thickened with tension. Lily's eyes narrowed as she listened to Sonny's voice, a mixture of grief, anger, and a twisted sense of justice. "The press investigated for a few weeks, but then everyone just stopped asking questions," Sonny continued. "No one cared about what actually happened to my brother. Why? Because you're married to Kevin Williams. Because you're the mayor. It's not fair. Sid deserves justice, and I plan to get it for him." In his hand, Sonny held the remote control that operated the home movies playing on the flat-screen TV. Lily was a captive audience, forced to confront the past she thought she had left behind. Sonny's motive became clear.
He wanted Lily to understand the void she had created in the world by taking Sid Mangolia's life. "Sonny, listen to me," Lily pleaded. "I didn't kill your brother. Nancy, my friend, my former friend, she hired Sid to attack us. She was working for Juanita Hernandez. Sid attacked me and I fought him off, but I only broke his arm."
"Liar!" Sonny shouted. "I'm not an idiot. People don't die from broken arms."
"I agree with you," Lily offered. "Something happened to your brother. I assume Juanita or Nancy set him up. They must have done something to cause him to have such an extreme reaction to his arm being broken. They wanted him out of the picture."
"You don't know what you're talking about," Sonny pushed back. "You murdered my brother in cold blood, and now you're going to have to sit and take in what you've done. I want you to feel it. I'm sure to you my brother was just another person to murder, but he had a life, a family, a brother who loved him. And I want you to sit in this room and watch all of that and remember what you did to destroy his happiness."
Sonny, with a solemn expression, exited the room, leaving Lily alone with the haunting images from Hidden Sid's youth. The scene shifted from heartwarming family gatherings to darker moments that painted a disturbing picture of the brothers' shared history. Lily was confronted first with happy Christmases and playful Easter egg hunts, but gradually the tone shifted. Young Sonny and Sid engaged in cruel acts. They blew up frogs in a jar with fireworks, tied cats' tails together, and reveled in sadistic tortures inflicted upon innocent animals. Why would they record this? Lily wondered to herself. The twisted dynamic between the Mangolia brothers unfolded on the screen, exposing a dark underbelly that fueled Sonny's desire for retribution. Caught in the inescapable grip of the unfolding revelations, Lily grappled with her dire situation. She was trapped. And based on the home movies she had watched, Sonny was capable of terrible things. Lily knew that things were going to get worse before they got better, but she had to stay hopeful. Her unborn twins, resting calmly inside her womb, were relying on her. Sonny stumbled back into the room, clutching a large bottle of vodka in his hands. The pungent scent of alcohol filled the air as he swayed unsteadily. Drunk and consumed by grief, Sonny reiterated his desire for Lily to comprehend the magnitude of what she had taken from him by killing his brother.
"Do you now understand what you've done?"
Sonny's bleary eyes focused on the images playing on the screen, and he seemed oblivious to the fact that Lily was not solely responsible for Sid's death. In his intoxicated state, Sonny clung to a distorted version of events, fueled by his grief and a misguided sense of vengeance. Lily, seizing the opportunity, began to survey her surroundings. As Sonny continued to take in his home movies and guzzle vodka, Lily pieced together a plan. Her sharp mind assessed the situation, searching for an opening to turn the tide in her favor. The erratic emotions that gripped Sonny provided a window of opportunity, and Lily knew she had to act fast if she wanted to survive. As Lily plotted her next move, Kevin was busy in Silicon Valley. Kevin accompanied Pembroke Rindollar, a young chess prodigy and a potential candidate for Keeper of the Upper Realm, to a pre-tournament mixer for all players in the upcoming Chess World Championship. There was excitement and anticipation in the air as Dennis and Denise, Pembroke's argumentative parents, found themselves at odds with the otherwise gleeful event. They were displeased by Kevin's presence. "He shouldn't be here," Denise noted. "Pembroke shouldn't be distracted before the big match." "Maybe focusing on something besides the big match could be good for him," Dennis countered. "Did you ever consider that?" Pembroke broke into his parents' brewing argument before it got out of hand in public. "I want Kevin here. He's my friend," the boy said. "You're siding with your father?" Denise noted angrily. "You don't think I know what's best for you?" "No, Mother. I don't agree or disagree with either of you," Pembroke responded. "I'm just not worried about it. Kevin's my friend, and I want him here." Pembroke's focus was not on the imminent chess championship, but on orchestrating a romantic connection between two shy chess players. Amid the clinking of glasses and the hum of conversation, Pembroke's parents continued their bickering about strategy, opponents, and preparations for the tournament. Pembroke, uninterested in the tournament itself, bluntly stated that he cared more about the budding romance between the two chess players. He gestured toward a pair of 30-something nerds engrossed in their own worlds, unaware of each other's presence. Pembroke's eyes gleamed with the excitement of being a would-be chess matchmaker. As Dennis and Denise continued to argue, Pembroke plotted to bring the two lonely hearts together. He had observed the subtle glances and shared smiles, recognizing the unspoken connection between the chess players. In his mind, the romantic endeavor was of far greater importance than any move on the chessboard.